Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace episode 83 on your Easter weekend. Hope all you guys are having an extra day off for this weekend and you're enjoying it, playing some games, and of course, watching us. We got a big show this week. We're going to talk about the big Nintendo Direct that happened this week.
And fresh off the live stream press, we're going to talk about the new revelations from Battlefront II, Star Wars.
And at long last, I finally got my wish. There's a brand new 3D platformer from some former Rare guys, Yooka-Laylee. We're going to talk about it.
Make that wish on a monkey's paw thing?
I may have. We're going to talk about it in today's show. Let's go! Happy Easter, everyone. I know it's not quite Easter, but I'm guessing the majority of the people who will watch this episode will watch the archive, and by the time they see it, it will be Easter.
Yeah.
So
it's almost Easter in most of the world.
It is, yeah.
If not
and
already, if you're in the Asian side of things.
Yeah, I guess you're right, actually. They are. I don't even know if they celebrate Easter in Asia. Probably not, because it's a religious holiday.
There's Christians over there.
Yeah. Well, they do celebrate Christmas in Asian countries, and that's a religious holiday.
You don't need to be a Christian to like chocolate rabbits.
That's true. Hopefully you guys all got a big Easter basket full of chocolate and other goodies, and hopefully you don't finish it by the time the weekend is up. I know it's easy, especially if you're playing games that just sit there and pop snacks. So we're ready to go. We have a big show. Actually, we have a ton of topics on today's show, and hopefully we can get through them all in our 3-hour time limit that we seem to have set for ourselves. We'll do our best. But we should get going because, like I said, we have a lot of topics to get to before we're all done. Matt, the Nintendo Direct happened this week. Initially, it was kind of marketed as something for Splatoon 2 and ARMS. It ended up being far more than that. I was blown away by the Direct. Maybe it was one of those cases where my expectations were lowered so much that when I actually got what they were giving us, I was kind of taken aback by it. Mm-hmm. What were your overall impressions of the Direct before we kind of move into the more granular discussion?
There was a lot of 3DS stuff.
A lot of 3DS. Wow.
That was way more 3DS than I would have expected a post-Switch launch Direct to contain. I was kind of expecting it to be like a big ARMS segment and a big Splatoon segment, and it really wasn't. I mean, there was a big ARMS segment.
Yeah.
And a decent-sized Splatoon segment, but there was a lot of little things. A lot of 3DS stuff. Clearly, they are not, stepping away from that platform anytime soon.
Well, one thing I would say about the 3DS stuff that was in the Direct is that all the games that were in it were games that were already announced. Mm-hmm. So they didn't announce anything new, other than Miitopia coming to the West. But we knew about that game already, which is basically just this more elaborate version of Find Me, which I'm totally cool with. Glad to hear that's coming. But otherwise, it was all games that we knew were coming to the West, games that were already announced, nothing new. I'm assuming if there are any new 3DS games in the pipeline, we'll be getting that at E3. Mm-hmm. But I'm right there with you. I was really shocked that they dedicated so much time to the 3DS when the Switch has just launched and people are really looking kind of for new Switch software and things like that. So I think probably if you looked at the runtime of the Direct, it was probably split in half. About half 3DS, half Switch, which again I was pretty surprised about. So let's start talking specifically about some of the games that they showed, and we're not going to talk about all of them because there were literally like 20 plus games in that Direct. Let's talk about ARMS first. Mm-hmm. ARMS seems to be this game that's it's not tracking especially well on Sifted. It's a Nintendo first-party game, so it's always going to get sort of that organic interest from the Nintendo fans, but it doesn't seem to be reaching out anywhere beyond that. Matt, now that we've seen this, it's like an 8-minute presentation that they did with some of the worst narration I think I've ever heard in my life.
I wasn't clear. Is that narration added for this, or is that narration going to be part of the game?
I can't tell. I really hope he's not part of the game, but I'm thinking it might be because what you can't see, our graphics are covering it up, but in the bottom left of the screen there, there's this little like yellow robotish guy that seems to be the narrator of the game.
I felt like if he was not part of the game, he'd be animated better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't tell if that was like added for the presentation or if you're going to have like an announcer during this.
Yeah, I hope not, because the voiceover for this thing that Nintendo put out was terrible. Like, it was literally like so annoying I almost turned down the volume on it. So I hope that's not the case. But let's talk about the game proper, Matt. I think one thing that Nintendo tried to focus on with this particular presentation was the depth that it has. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like it succeeded?
Well, not for me. I don't find there's nothing interesting about this game to me at all.
Really, nothing.
No.
Wow.
I don't like. I mean, I like that how clean the art is, but I don't like the art. If that makes any sense.
No, yeah,
like,
I can understand that.
It
looks like it's trying to look like Overwatch. I mean, let's be
yeah.
honest.
Yeah. It's very character action driven, and everybody's got their own moves. So they're more differentiated than I would have expected, but like I still get weird flashbacks of Ready to Rumble boxing from it. And it just,
Which was not a good game.
No, and it's very based around the waggle thing, even though I know you can play it with the standard controller, but it's just, the other problem is like, gauging like linear distance in 3D games is very difficult, even under the best of circumstances. I can just see this being a matter of just like, the precision not quite there, and you're sort of having to guess or learn the timing of all these things, and it's just not something I'm interested in. I feel like I'd played like 2 rounds of this and never touch it again.
Well, especially what you're seeing right there in that footage with the curved shots.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard enough to place a straight shot.
Yeah, this curved shot seemed to be like the key to like kind of the basic strategy of this game, to get around defenses and to get around obstacles. And
yeah, there doesn't appear to be any lock-on in the game at all.
No, I mean, unless they're like, they seem to kind of always face each other.
Yeah,
but I don't think there's a lock-on for your
targeting,
your actual attacks. And there's little interesting things happening there, like they just showed there, like when that character's in the air, she'll kick away attacks that come near her. So she's got kind of a mid-air counter.
Yeah. And they all have a counter, some form of counter.
I just don't see this quite catching on in the way they seem to want it to catch on. I mean, I guess I don't know. I've seen people like trying to claim that this is like the next esports phenomenon, and it's like, I don't see this. I guess it's possible this could kind of, like you said earlier before the show, this could get kind of like a Rocket League like boost somehow, just by being like an accessible and visually easy to read sort of competition game. But like, I'm skeptical, because while that did happen with Rocket League, part of Rocket League's appeal was it was free on PS Plus when it first came out,
yeah.
And also it's on everything. Like, you have a platform that runs Rocket League, whereas this, you're going to have to buy a Switch for it. And even if you believe a lot of people would want a Switch for this, they're going to have to find a Switch.
That would be hard to believe, that somebody would buy a Switch just for this game. But, I mean, look, I was wrong about Rocket League because, and I mentioned this before the show when we were talking off air, I compared it to other sports games. And I said, man, this thing is completely bereft of modes and options. It's very simple. I didn't feel like the gameplay was precise enough to sort of engender intense competitive play. And I ended up being wrong. I mean, again, what you said, it being free was a huge thing. It got everybody on board. And having a community for games like this is important. If you play a game and you see nobody's playing and it takes a long time to get a game, it will turn you off from playing the game. Rocket League, because they gave it away free right out of the gate, it built its community right out of that gate. And now, I mean, we just saw this week that its retail version sold 1 million copies. So it is certainly, it helped build that initial snowball that helped it roll downhill. And you're right, for that snowball to build for ARMS, every single player is going to have to invest $60 in it. And at least from what I can tell, it seems to be a full price game. It may be less. What struck me, though, and what kind of hit me whenever I was watching this, is that ARMS is a fighting game where you have just a couple moves. Isn't that really, if you look at it at the base level, isn't that really what it is?
Somewhat.
Because you have the 2 arms, and you can mix and match them, and each arm sort of has, like, multiple abilities.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, like, like let's take Street Fighter 2, Ken and Ryu have 3 moves. They have the fireball, they have a hurricane kick, they have the
special
punch, special moves, and then they have the 6, 3 punches, 3 kicks, and various forms, that permutations that are useful in different situations based on how close you are,
there's high,
aerial,
low,
or whatever.
medium,
right.
and
the thing as a fighting game person that I look at this and it like kind of warns me off, is that I feel like a whole lot of this game is, in terms of like fighting your opponent, is going to be about whether you can manipulate the controls properly to hit them, rather than can they avoid your attacks. Like, I feel like the mind games here are more you against yourself than you against the opponent, at least early on. And that's not an interesting competition to me.
I just wonder if if this game is played by people who, and I probably should have watched some YouTube videos of people playing it at events and whatnot, but I'm wondering if when it's just the layman playing this game, if it isn't just a button masher, so to speak.
For sure.
Where
all fighting games are
where
that
the
to some
arms
degree.
are just flailing. I mean, I would disagree with that. I mean, I think the better fighters are the better fighters because they're not button mashers. I mean, I would never call Virtua Fighter a button masher.
Right, but if you're someone who doesn't know what they're doing, is going to button mash that game.
Yeah.
That's the basic fighting
And they
game.
will lose miserably.
Well, yes. That's
But
usually
my
how you can
point
tell
is-
when one of them's a good game or
My
not.
point is, though, I don't know if anyone's going to get to the point, though, where this game isn't that way.
I'm sure they will, but like it won't be the majority, and it won't be,
Maybe that should have been the better way to put it.
brothers.
I wonder if
it won't be like brothers and sisters playing against each other, and it's not going to be like Rocket League where you go into a game and you'll probably see at least two people that really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
At least these days.
I'm wondering, too, if people who play with just a traditional pad will have an advantage over the people who focus on the motion controls, or vice versa. This week, I don't know if you saw or not, but Microsoft just okayed Gears of War 4 ranked play, Xbox One versus PC players. So we're kind of starting to see that fence be broken down in between control schemes, so to speak. And there's been a lot of discussion about Overwatch and playing against people on PC versus console players. And this kind of creates that wall organically with the way the game is designed. So it'll be interesting to see. I will first say I am actually more excited for ARMS now than I was before the presentation. Because to me, it showed more depth than I thought it had at first. I still don't think it's great, and I think if you just compare it, kind of like how I compared Rocket League to like NBA 2K, I feel like if you compare ARMS to a more traditional fighting game, it's probably going to come up short in a lot of ways, whether it's modes or just the depth of the gameplay. But again, I was wrong with Rocket League. I didn't think it would become as big as it did. And I have a feeling this might be a minor hit. I don't know if it'll quite hit Splatoon levels like Splatoon did with the Wii U.
Yeah, I don't see this having the wide appeal that Splatoon did with the Nintendo fan base, especially with Splatoon 2 coming on the heels of it so soon.
I mean, I thought Splatoon looked crazy. I still think it looks crazy. Like, I don't really like the character models or the art in the game. I obviously recognize that the gameplay is completely unique and unlike any other shooter out there.
I'd rather look at Splatoon than this, art style-wise.
Yeah.
I just, for whatever reason, this just does not appeal to me.
Well, it's coming out June 16th. And it's coming out along with it is a brand new Joy-Con color. And Sam, I think we have the image there. Puke yellow. Neon yellow is what they're calling it. I don't know why that image isn't filling up the whole screen, but
There you go.
But neon yellow.
Yeah.
Why does Nintendo seem to be going for these crazy eye-searing colors with Switch?
Guess what the kids are into, man.
Is it?
I
Are
don't
the
know.
kids into neon?
I don't know. That looks like the stuff you'd release if this came out like 92.
Right, yeah.
And combine all the Joy-Con colors, you got a decent pair of shorts.
I can't see myself trading in my grays for these.
No, they haven't hit the color combination to make me jump off the gray yet.
Yep. And then in addition to that, when they announced the new color, they also announced a battery pack life extender for the Joy-Cons, which I don't get at all
Because they seem to last quite
forever.
a while. Yeah.
Like, I've never had the Joy-Cons run out of battery.
No.
Like, by the time I'm done playing and I redock my Switch, they're still good.
Yeah, I feel like the Switch is going to run out of battery long.
way before the
Joy-Con does.
Joy-Cons. Yeah, so I'm surprised that they're going to put this out on June 16th as well, instead of an official licensed battery pack for the Switch itself.
And of course, the conspiracy people are already saying like, "Oh, that's the fix for the left Joy-Con problem," and they're just not telling anybody.
What's the fix?
I don't know.
Oh,
something
in the battery
some
pack?
magical thing in the battery pack that fixes it that they're never going to tell anybody about.
Oh, by the
which
way,
doesn't make any damn sense, but people are already saying it.
By the way, I should mention that I finally got my replacement left Joy-Con, and it didn't change anything. I cannot play Switch in my apartment. I just can't. It doesn't matter whether I'm in the living room or in the back bedroom. It doesn't matter. My left Joy-Con, and actually now the right one's almost just as bad as the left. Like, it just does not work in my apartment. I'm at my wit's end. I have no idea what it is, what's causing it. It's completely mind-boggling. Once I got the new one and it didn't work, I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, What the hell? Why am I the only person in the world with this problem? I don't get it. You're at a loss for words too.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I just manufacture them because mine's flawless. It makes me want to try mine at your house.
Well, no, remember, I brought mine in here, and it worked fine.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I don't know if, like...
You live under an antenna or something?
No, and there's there's a cell phone tower, like, 2 or 3 blocks away from where I live. Like, I can't see where that... I don't get it. I would be curious if anybody else is having this problem. At first, like, my right Joy-Con worked always, and the left would drop in and out. Now that I got the new left one, neither one of them seem to work. And I'm sitting 8 feet away from the console. I've put the console on the floor. I've put it up high. I've put it right in front of my TV. Doesn't make any difference. I don't know. Let's move on. Let's talk about Splatoon 2. Nintendo showed off a brand new mode for Splatoon 2. It is called the Salmon Run. It's a co-op mode.
Yeah, it's like a horde mode.
It's a horde mode, yeah, for Splatoon. That incorporates the other elements of Splatoon, which is putting the ink on the ground and it affects movement and all that. It actually looks a little bit more like a tower defense mode than a horde mode, because it seems like the enemies just kind of march in a row on a predetermined path.
I think they look like they were a little more broken up later in the segment here.
But
you're you're killing them and collecting their eggs.
Yeah. Matt, do you think it was a better idea to show this, or do you think we should have seen, like, the campaign mode? Because isn't that really, like, the big hang-up everybody had with the first Splatoon? Sort
of. I mean, it's anything that shows that it has different content from the first one is probably a good move. So this seems fine. I'm sure... and this is probably also a good idea because, there's people that like the Splatoon thing but aren't super into the competitive nature of it.
That's true,
and give them, like, the, assurance that you can play something with your friends or that doesn't make you go online and play against, like, people that are, like, way better than you. That's a more appealing thing. I think you could go on either or. It's kind of a coin flip in my book, but, like, I don't think this was the wrong thing to show at all.
Yeah, I mean, the other point I could make is that the release date for Splatoon 2 was announced, and it's late July. Yeah. July 21st, I think it was? Or 29th, maybe.
No, I want to say 24th.
Boy, we're all over the map. I know it's late 20s. July. So there's plenty of time for Nintendo to blow this out, as well as at E3.
Yeah, it'll be a big at E3. This and ARMS, I expect to be the big E3.
Well, ARMS will be coming out like right around E3.
Yeah, but like right after E3.
Which is always weird when games are released right when the biggest show in the world is coming out.
But
it's a good way to bury the lead, so to speak.
True, but I mean, I think this and ARMS will be the thing they focus on with Mario Odyssey, probably the big new thing.
And Retro's new Metroid game.
Keep hope alive.
Keep trying. But I think this does look fun. I'll say that much. Salmon Run, I think it looks like a good time. And it's a unique take on Horde mode, which is really hard to find these days. We just saw with Mass Effect Andromeda, it came out, it had a Horde mode. It ended up being pretty much like every other Horde mode out there. Even Gears 4, its Horde mode wasn't especially unique or creative. So it's good to see Nintendo kind of working the tools that it has at its disposal with this franchise into something that's familiar yet still foreign. So I'm pretty excited for that. I thought it had a good showing. Let's get back to the 3DS stuff really quickly and get a little more specific. We're not going to talk about everything, obviously. Probably the biggest game was Hey Pikmin, which before it was just called Pikmin for the Nintendo 3DS. They finally gave it a name. Dedicated a good bit of time to that game right off the top. In fact, it was the first game that they showed in the entire Direct. How do you feel about a side-scrolling Pikmin, Matt? You think it's going to work?
Yeah, I'm sure it'll work, but I'm probably not going to play it.
Yeah. I'll say one thing, too, is that
might get the amiibo, though.
Yeah, of course. I'll say one thing about Nintendo and the 3DS is that I feel like with the 3DS, I've lost a little bit of faith in Nintendo first party because there was a point in my life where pretty much I felt like almost anything Nintendo put out was going to be high quality. But we've seen with the 3DS, Nintendo has been willing to put out software that hasn't quite been up to that level. Like, for instance, Mario Sports Superstars. That game was not sent out for review, which is something I've never, ever heard Nintendo doing. Ever. I mean, if you look, the game's been out. There's like 2 reviews for it on Sifted at this point. Normally by now we'd have like 10. So that game was not sent out. A lot of it's like Pokemon Rumble World games. A lot of the Mario and Donkey Kong games have been kind of And so I don't have that blind faith in Nintendo's handheld software anymore that I used to have. And so that makes me a little nervous with pretty much any game that it debuts on 3DS now. And right now we're just seeing like the B-roll.
The rest of the 3DS stuff.
Yeah, this is all the
Monster
3DS
Hunter.
stuff they showed at the Direct. One of the other big focuses for Nintendo, because it is the 20th anniversary of Kirby? 25th. So the rest of this year, Kirby's a huge focus for Nintendo. It announced 3 brand new Kirby games.
Because they like Kirby way more than they like Samus.
Apparently, yeah. And I guess maybe the numbers bear that out. Maybe people like Kirby better than Samus. I don't know. Obviously, the Mass Metroid for 3DS was just like a blip on the radar and gone in the flash of an eye, and rightfully so.
I can't imagine why.
It wasn't a good. Again, there's another example of 3DS software where I'm losing my faith in Nintendo's quality, so to speak. Kirby, but all the Kirby games that they announced are basically eShop games. They're not full price release games. You're going to be able to download them only. This one is basically the sequel to Kirby's Rumble World. It's supposed to have more stages, more enemies. It's supposed to be a little bit longer than the first one. The other one is Team Kirby. I can't remember the rest of the title. It's a terrible title. But it's a cooperative online, almost like an action RPG a little bit, where 4 people play at once, and there's character classes. Yeah, we're seeing it right now. And there are character classes that you play as. So there's like a healer, and there's like the tank, and then there's the ranged character, and then you cooperatively play through what a lot of people would probably consider typical Kirby stages. That, to me, has a lot more appeal than what we're seeing right now. I like that idea. And it's also an eShop game that you'll be able to download only. I'm not a big Kirby fan, to be honest. Like, his anniversary doesn't mean that much to me.
Yeah, I like the original game on Game Boy.
Yeah.
And I liked beating him up in Smash Brothers, and that's about as far as it goes,
yeah.
I guess.
The crazy thing is, that character in particular has the most latitude, probably, of any Nintendo character, because he can turn into anything.
He's got a lot of variety in his
whatever
series.
he eats, he can become. So, basically, the sky's the limit as far as what you can do with that character. And for whatever reason, it's just never resonated with me. Probably because he's just a pink circle. Maybe that has something to do with it. He's just a pink globe. He doesn't have a lot of personality. It's like, we'll put a hat on him, and now he's like construction worker Kirby. Like, it's so funny.
Man of 1,000 faces.
Yeah. So that was another big thrust was for Kirby's anniversary, and there's a third game coming for 3DS that they only mentioned that they didn't say the title of. That's coming Q4 this year. 3 Kirby games in 1 year for the 3DS. Matt, do you think after seeing all this...
We've gotten 3 Metroid games in, 11 years?
Yeah.
Bite me.
Lots of Japanese stuff, too. Called Sep Revolt.
The Monster Hunter kind of...
Monster Hunter Stories,
thing,
which tanked in Japan, oddly enough. It had Monster Hunter in the title, and it still tanked in Japan. That's not good.
Well, they know what they want.
Yeah.
And they ain't that.
Yeah. Several JRPGs. Ever Oasis was shown again. That game looks great to me. The more I see it, the more I'm into it. But it's a JRPG. It looks like if you own a 3DS, you're good for the rest of the year. Like, you're going to have a steady stream of software until the end of the year, and then the question becomes what happens then.
Probably more software.
Yeah.
It looks like.
Here's Yokai Watch 2. That's coming to the West. I'm sure Yokai Watch 3 is already out in Japan. I'm sure that'll make its way over eventually as well. And then the question becomes, like I said, do all these people who have been working on these games move over and start making Switch games?
I think that's going to depend on how many Switches have been sold by then.
Yeah, because look, one thing that was encouraging about this to me was that they didn't announce any new 3DS games. That it was all stuff that we knew about, stuff that's already been out in Japan, things that were already announced. If they've shown like 5 or 10 brand new 3DS games and just shown trailers for them, like, hey, we're just getting started on this, I think I'd be a little nervous. But these projects were already in the works.
This is just an RPG maker.
Yeah.
Fez,
yeah. And they're just finishing up, basically, projects that were already in development before the Switch even came out. So I was a little encouraged by that. They showed new Sonic gameplay, which we didn't mention. The first side-scrolling gameplay from Sonic Forces.
Looks cool.
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, it just looks like Sonic Generations, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, right down to there's another Sonic.
Yeah.
The old-school Sonic.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess, and they're introducing a new character that they'll reveal later. And it's like that's as the meme goes, Sonic and his shitty friends. We haven't had a new shitty friend in a long time. So
wait, they're going to introduce a new shitty friend?
That seemed to be the indication at the end of this trailer.
Aren't there enough already?
Apparently not. Like, for a long time, they kind of pared it back to just Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy.
Right.
And now I guess they're feeling confident enough to branch out with somebody else. Although I wonder if it's like it's got like a silhouette shot at the end of the trailer or something. And
this is actually a different trailer.
Different trailer.
Yeah.
At the end of the trailer is like a silhouette shot. It's like, oh, coming soon or whatever. And
Shadow.
it kind of looked like it had like fox ears or cat ears. So I'm kind of wondering if, like, because there's the whole Generations angle, if it's like, is the main bad guy like an alternate dimension evil version of Tails?
Oh,
Because that would be kind of awesome.
that's possible.
Like a Tails that's just like brutally angry that his Sonic like neglected him and thought he was like a loser or like a sidekick or something, and decided to like take over his world.
Yeah.
I'm like, that'd be kind of great. Like a cyborg like totalitarian like Tails. I'd be into that.
It's very hard for me to be optimistic about any Sonic game at this point.
Yeah. Well, I'm more interested in Sonic Mania.
Yeah.
But
Which they also showed.
But at least Sonic Forces looks better than Sonic Boom. So
I'll give it that. I'll definitely agree with that. Sonic Boom was... There's been a lot of bad Sonic
not
games.
tops.
I mean, that's just one of them.
Yeah, I mean, Sonic Boom is, I think, one of the lowest points. I mean, not like 2006 low, but like they had the terrible bugs and the weird jumping glitch where you could jump forever,
right?
And like all, I mean, it was a bad game that was also a rushed game that was also an unfinished game.
I remember being at E3 that year, and I was walking into the Nintendo booth. You know how they have like the third-party stuff like around the edge of Nintendo's booth. And
so it doesn't touch all the glorious Nintendo stuff in the middle.
Yeah, and I stepped into the booth space, and I look over, and there was a PR guy that we've known for like ever. And I go, "Hey, what's going on?" He's like, "Oh, Shane, good to see you, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "What's up?" We, small talk for a little bit. He's repping that game. And I'm like, "Oh, wow." I'm like, "I want to play it." And he's like, "You do?" And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
I mean, look, I had known him for like 15 years, and he knows he can like shoot straight with me, and he knew I wasn't going to write out and like say, "Oh, the PR rep from Sega like said, why would you like it?" But yeah, he was just totally honest, and I started playing, and I could totally see what he was talking about. Like, he looked bored out of his mind, like nobody's playing the game like all day. So
it's funny, I have a few stories like that about PR reps, even the ones I don't know doing stuff like that, and they're all Sega. Well, I'd be like, "Oh, I want to see this thing." They're like, "Really?"
Yeah.
One of them did that to me with Nightshade.
Oh, really?
The sequel to Shinobi. I was like, "I want to see Nightshade." This is actually, I think, at TGS. And the guy was like, "Really?" And I was like, I think that might have been more like I'm an American, and he was surprised I cared about this like
obscure Japanese game.
But like, it's funny. Like, Sega always seems a little surprised that you care.
Yeah. Well, they used to have an internal PR team, and they got rid of that to cut costs or whatever, and now they're just sort of bringing in agencies to do their PR for them. So, hype for Nintendo products rise or fall after that Direct?
About even.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing there we didn't know about. There's nothing there I didn't expect.
I think it was reassuring in some ways for maybe people who...
I mean, at least everything's coming out on time.
Yeah. I think in that regard, like, it looks like all the Switch stuff is on target to hit its date. No Mario yet, but obviously there's plenty of time for that.
I don't think we expected that.
Yeah, I didn't either. I mean, I didn't expect most of the stuff that we saw on that thing. But it's good to see that the early Switch software, the launch window software, is kind of coming in where we kind of anticipated. I think more importantly, it's good for the 40 million people who own a 3DS to see that the system's not just going to be neglected. And they can kind of have that easing out process with the 3DS as maybe they switch over to the Switch, so to speak. So, good job, Nintendo. As one of the better Directs I can remember in recent memory, full of content, relevant content. The only thing missing really was any reveals or any kind of new information other than that first look at side-scrolling Sonic Forces. So let's move on. Next, we're going to talk about an indie game I've been playing for the last couple days called Mr. Shifty. Matt, are you a fan of Hotline Miami?
Not especially.
What were your big criticisms with it? Why did you not like it?
I'm not a huge top-down person, and they had the constant sort of like open door, do wrong thing, get killed, immediately start over.
Yeah.
And while it's designed for that to be part of the gameplay, I just didn't find that. I don't find that particularly compelling. I like the themes. I like the music a lot. I like
music was great. One of the best I think one of the best game soundtracks of the last decade.
Yeah, and but it's just I didn't find it particularly engaging to play. I'm just because of the not a top-down guy.
Did you like the original GTAs back in the day? Yeah,
I tried. I
tried too. I wanted to like it. I just. Really
Hotline Miami makes more sense than that because the problem with GTA top down is like you can't see where you're frickin' driving.
Right.
It's like, well, that's not fun.
Yeah.
And we'll get to talking about not being shown what you're trying to do later in the show.
Yeah,
as
for
well.
sure.
But no, I mean it's fine. I appreciate the ultra violence and the theme and the setting and everything, but I just sort of bounced off the gameplay.
Yeah, well, if you don't like Hotline Miami, you're not going to like... I cannot say that. Hotline Miami. I keep splurging it all together. But if you don't like that game, you're not going to like Mr. Shifty. Because the best way I would describe it in a sentence or as a tagline would be Hotline Miami minus the style. It's
Hotline Miami is all style.
Right. And so strip all that away, which I'm guessing was probably one of the few redeeming factors that you found in Hotline Miami.
Clearly, I am not a Mr. Shifty advocate then.
Mr. Shifty is all melee-based. So at the beginning of the game, all you have is your fists. And then after you get to like the second or third stage, you start being able to pick up items like 2x4s and sculptures and things like that you can throw or you can use as melee. But their break rate is even worse than like Breath of the Wild. Like you literally whack like two enemies with it, and it breaks, and you have to go back to using your fists. But it's very much like Hotline Miami. It's like you need to survey each room before you go into it. And can we get some of the footage rolling, Sam, so they can see what I'm talking about?
Is there Hotline Miami?
No, Mr. Shifty.
The next thing's Twitch. Have to add it.
Oh, must have been deleted. But it's very much the same where you have to, and they let you do it. Like the right stick controls the camera, so you can scan up and down and look at like the next room that you go into. But a big part of it is kind of stopping and looking at the room, looking at the enemy placement, and then trying to figure out how you can attack each room. Or at least that's how I thought it was at first. What I eventually discovered playing this game is that there's basically its unique mechanic is the ability to teleport. So you can see right there, you can teleport through walls, pretty much any wall in the game that you want to. And what I discovered was that
somebody really liked the opening scene of X-Men 2.
Yeah. And what I eventually discovered was that if you teleport quickly enough, basically what you can do is you teleport, land 2 punches, which is enough to kill a lot of the enemies, and then teleport again. And it just turned into kind of this rhythm. Teleport, punch, punch. Teleport, punch, punch. And as long as you do that, the enemies will never have enough time to shoot you. Because what they do is they pull their guns.
And you have like one hit, you're dead.
One hit, you're dead. And so they pull their guns and you hear an audio cue. It'll be like, yee. And then within a second, you have to move or they'll shoot you. But what I found is if you punch twice, teleport, punch twice, teleport, they never have enough time to scope you up and shoot you. I think my biggest issue with this is that it just really has no style whatsoever. It's like the most generic sort of framework for the gameplay. The gameplay, I think, is okay. It's not especially deep, but I feel like they do a good job with the limited mechanics that they give you. But it just has no sort of frivolities to it, no sort of framing that makes it compelling. The writing in it is just typical blah, blah, blather. Like, the story doesn't really matter. There aren't any cutscenes. The game starts, there's no cutscene. It just starts, and there you are. Like, the wall blows up, and you come into the first building that you're infiltrating. Story, pretty much irrelevant. I played this on Xbox One.
You really hate blonde guys.
Yeah. I played, and see, the other thing, too, is the AI of the enemies is really dumb. So you can kind of manipulate them with the walls. Like, you just warp through a wall, and then they'll start tracking to go around another way to get into the room, and you just wait by the doorway and wait for them to come in, and you hit them. And there are cool little nuance like there where you can kind of kick the door into them, and it'll kill them. So there's sort of little things that you can do in the game that, I don't know if it adds any depth, but it makes it a little more exciting to play. But overall, I don't know that I would recommend this game. I would probably recommend getting Hotline Miami for much cheaper. The soundtrack is worth paying for.
Yeah, you can probably get Hotline Miami 1 and 2 for the price of this.
Probably, yeah. And I played the Xbox One version, which is what this footage is from, and then they also sent me a code of the Switch version. In the Switch version, I only played for a couple stages just to see how it runs. And there is slowdown in the Switch version. There is slowdown. I mean, you can count the polygons that this game is displaying at a time. And there's slowdown in the Switch version, and I hope that's not sort of a harbinger of things to come for that platform. But I think this is selling for $15. No way would I ever pay $15 for this game. It does get really monotonous. I don't know how far I have not finished the game, but I played it for a few hours and feel like I'm near the end or pretty close to the end, just kind of based upon the way they had handed out sort of new abilities and things up until that point. I would wait till this game drops to at least like $10 and probably more like $5, I'm thinking. And if you had the choice, I would not get the Switch version because, like I said, it has slowdown, which I just still can't really comprehend. I am guessing that the port for the Switch was quick and dirty.
Yeah.
In fact, probably quick as in like 6 months quick. And that is kind of the danger of the fact that the Switch is so easy to develop for, right? Is that these indie guys can be like, I got it up and running. And then they're like, oh, that's good enough. And maybe try to get it to market because everyone's playing catch up with Switch software with the other versions right now. Like we're seeing it with Yooka-Laylee, for instance. Like it's supposed to come out for Wii U, they canceled it. Now the Switch version, they're saying it's coming out till like the end of the year. So I could see some of these indie developers wanting to get their Switch versions out day and date.
Just looking at the footage, it really does lack the dynamic element of Hotline Miami.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about it. Like this was the first boss fight right here, and the boss fight was basically just kill 50 guys instead of 2 guys. But it's very easy to manipulate the AI and kind of just school them in a lot of ways. And I felt the challenge was more of just the fact that it's one hit and you're dead. And it wasn't that the developers were creative in sort of sculpting that difficulty. So, Mr. Shifty, I recommend it for $5.
Wait for the Steam sale.
Yeah, probably wait until it's bundled in together. The reviews,
I feel like you'll start to see these. This came in like a humble bundle by the end of the year.
Yeah, probably so. The reviews have been all over the place. Probably half the people agree with me that it's not worth the money they're asking for it. It's kind of cool, has its moments. But then there are some people who are all over this game. Like Eurogamer gave it a recommended rating, which is pretty rare. I mean, Eurogamer probably gives out 2 or 3 recommended ratings per month. And this got it from Eurogamer. So maybe they're seeing something I'm not seeing. Like I said, I've played it for several hours, and it just wasn't really clicking for me. It was one of those games where I was playing it, and I'm like, do I really need to be spending my time playing this game? I guess that's maybe the best way I could just sum up the whole thing. So, Mr. Shifty, do not shift money out of your wallet for Mr. Shifty. Let's move on. We're going to talk next about Germany.
Naturally.
Actually, if you think about it, and you talk about countries other than the United States that we've talked about on GameFace, what country have we probably talked about more than any other?
Well, Germany.
Other than Japan.
It's really Germany, Japan, and Australia.
Yeah. Australia we talked about a couple weeks ago on the show. Germany, usually for all the wrong reasons. And once again, we're talking about Germany for all the wrong reasons.
Land of the green blood.
Yeah. So basically, Germany's government has decided that if you're going to be a Twitch streamer or a YouTube streamer or any kind of a streamer whatsoever, you have to pay money for a license, for a broadcast license, basically. And those licenses scale. Some of them cost €1,000 up to €10,000. And isn't this crazy?
I feel like maybe the German legislators don't know how much money a YouTube streamer makes.
I mean, look, even the German government said, look, we get it. We get that we don't get it. Like, we don't get streaming. And we can see why a lot of people are like up in arms about this. But basically what Germany is doing is it is applying the principles of broadcast television in Germany to live streaming from normal citizens like us. And unfortunately, I guess Germany just doesn't have laws on the books that can address some modern technology. And look, the United States doesn't really either.
No.
I mean, our fair use laws, our internet laws were all created way too long ago, and they've not been updated because most administrations
because we're too busy updating copyright law to keep Mickey Mouse owned by Disney forever.
Right. Funny how they have no problem changing that when it needs to be changed because they've done that twice now for Mickey.
I think 3 times.
3 times.
Copyright law basically exists in the form it does in the United States because Disney's lawyers say we want it to be like this.
Pretty much. Yeah.
So. But this is, I mean, there's no real, like, the fair use thing is just like, it's a defense in a legal case. It's not like a legal right you have.
Yeah.
The main reason, like, there hasn't been some kind of massive crackdown on it is because it's just too big to do that to. Like, you'd have to.
Well, now it is because of YouTube and Twitch and.
But you'd have to, you'd have to go after tens of thousands of people for that. This seems a more elegant way of just getting people to stop doing it because you don't have the money to pay for it. But, like, I'm not sure what their objective. I mean, maybe they're just applying kind of their TV license like idea to the internet and hoping it sticks. But I feel like this tax is not long for this world once more information comes down the pipeline.
Well, one thing they did mention was that from their perspective, they were looking at it like, hey, I mean, in all honesty, we don't really want people, because there's very strict laws with broadcast television. Like, you have to wait till 10 p.m. to show certain types of content. And I think what Germany is trying to do, and Germany is very prudish when it comes to content. It's the country that bans hyper-violent games. It's the country that bans hypersexual games. So it has a history of this, of sort of trying to control when and where people sort of access that type of content. And so I can kind of understand why Germany's doing this. If that's the way they run their country, it does kind of make sense that that would apply to sort of any type of broadcasting, no matter how much money is behind it. Here's what I want to ask, Matt. Do you, even though this sucks and is total bullcrap, do you think that there might be some good, though, to it? Because aren't there too many people streaming at this point?
There are, I would say, but that doesn't mean I only want the ones with money to get to keep streaming.
Right, yeah.
Because this isn't weeding out the quality people, it's just weeding out people who can't pay for it.
Well, I think some people would argue that if you do quality streams, that you will be one of the people making money, right?
Yeah, but that doesn't help you if you're starting.
Right.
You know, you got to start somewhere, and if you got to throw €1,000 at something to even begin, how many people are going to do that? Because you're not, you know, that's one of the reasons.
Well, that's the bottom. I mean, it could be more.
Well, yeah, but presumably they don't up that until you're making more money at it. But, like, you know, who knows? My issue with that, and maybe this is kind of a uniquely, I don't know, American First Amendment brainwashing situation, but I feel like, you know, what if you miss out on one of the best streamers of all time because they didn't have €1,000 to spare to get a license to start doing this? Like, you're limiting the pool of potential talent by doing that in a way that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, maybe levying some kind of license tax on high-profile streamers would make more sense, but I don't think, like, you should have to do that if you just want to, like, stream, I don't know, like, stream, like, a game for you and your friends to watch or something. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Look, and I agree with you. I'm just playing devil's advocate for the sake of conversation. But sort of being the devil's advocate again, a way around that would be just to pre-record your streams and then just upload them to your YouTube channel. There would still be ways to sort of get discovered.
Right. But, I mean, like, the live interaction thing is something to be said for it. And there is a lot of movement away from YouTube recorded Let's Plays and into live stream Twitch plays. And I think Germany is probably aware of that.
Yeah,
and so,
I would hope.
So, I mean, I don't think we're going to see a lot of other nations follow suit here.
No, they're not setting a precedent, I don't believe.
I can't see the rest of the EU going like, oh, that looks like a good idea. You know, it's just
until they see how much money Germany generates from it.
We'll see. I mean,
which will probably be
That's done. The other thing is, like, that's a very hard thing to enforce.
Yeah, how do you police that?
Yeah.
I mean,
it could create a lot of jobs, I guess.
I mean, you could sort by country on Twitch, right?
In theory, yeah. But
maybe it's not as hard as you think then.
But you'd at least have to have people watching every stream that goes up from Germany and cross-referencing those people with their licenses, and then you have to figure out whose name is what, and, like, do you put your Twitch account name on your license, and then what if you switch your name? Like, I mean, there's a lot of bureaucratic nonsense that comes.
Well, then it starts to get dirty, where the government starts requesting IP addresses from Twitch, and you know, we've seen already with companies like Facebook and some of the big social media networks, you know, Twitter, that they're willing to push back against the government on stuff like that, and it just gets messy and probably becomes something that's just not worth the hassle when they start figuring out exactly how much money they're going to make over it. And here's really, I think, the most important thing from more of a nationalistic perspective is, if you're Germany, you're keeping your people down.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's like what you were saying, like, you're keeping them from discovering their full potential and reaching their full potential.
I just think, you know, I mean, like you said, it's like, you know, the laws are, you know, they're applying their TV standards or broadcast standards to something that doesn't really fit that. And, like, to me, that sounds more like a wake-up call, like, hey, your laws probably need updating.
No, yeah.
Because it doesn't work anymore.
And again, they're not alone. Our laws need updated as well.
Right, but they, like, we're not that far gone in this situation, at least. So I wonder, I mean, hopefully they will take the route of saying, like, okay, it is this way because this is what, the current law demands, but we're going to fix it, so just hang on, kind of thing. I mean, in the meantime, I don't know what you do if you're trying to stream and they want 10 grand out of you. But,
yeah. Well, that's 10,000 euro too. It's not 10,000
right.
USD, so it's not cheap.
Yeah, and then it also doesn't really. It's like, okay, what if someone's watching like, a stream from the United States in Germany?
Right.
Like,
how does that work?
How does that like? Does the German government say like, oh, we should get money from them too, or do you have to pay a fee for watching out of Germany stream? It gets real hairy real fast. So I have to believe that this is going to be a temporary thing until they figure out how to actually regulate it, if they even want to regulate this.
Yeah, I think in hindsight they'll probably look into it and be like, yeah, this law passed, but are we going to enforce this law? I
just feel like even if you try to modify it to fit the standard, you're still creating like this massive bureaucratic system to kind of manage something that, if we're being honest, can't be managed.
Yeah, it's impossible.
I mean, outside of like internet on, internet off, that's about all you can do, and no one's going to stand
the Russian way.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to watch. I think it's interesting just to see sort of these new emerging technologies come into place, and then they always have a grace period where everyone's just like, whatever, just let them do what. It's like YouTube when it launched. It's like, oh, they're stealing everybody's content, but it's so awesome, so whatever. Mm-hmm. And I feel like every new sort of technical paradigm shift gets this grace period where it's allowed to just kind of do whatever the hell it wants, and then slowly people start to, well, a lot of the times it's money.
People sometimes it's a moral panic.
Moral panic, you're right. And eventually it seems like the reins get put on and they start pulling it back a little bit. And maybe
then they spend decades loosening them again.
Right. And I feel like maybe that's what's happening with live streaming.
It's happening with movies.
Yeah.
There's stuff the rating system, raunchy.
Yeah, you're right.
Same with comic books. Comic books was a moral panic, created the Comics Code Authority, and then slowly they threw that off 20, 30 years later.
Yeah.
Something similar could happen with the internet. The question is, like, the internet is much harder to regulate than a concrete physical media medium. So, like, how do you even? It leaks out everywhere. There's nothing you can do about it.
The other thing I would say too is that as streaming gets bigger and more people cut the cord and turn away from traditional satellite or cable television and start getting their content online more, that's where big money comes into play, and that's generally where all the crappy stuff happens. Because
look at the net neutrality stuff right now in America, where it's
You're exactly right.
They can't win in the content war, so they're going to win charging you to look at the stuff you're looking at instead of them.
Yep. So big money is involved. So you start looking at advertisers who dedicate millions, and in some cases $1 billion a year to advertising on television. These advertisers start realizing, hey, wait a minute. One, all these people are leaving traditional cable television and satellite, and they're going over to these internet platforms. But two, they realize, hey, what's really the difference between the person watching this show on NBC or someone watching this live streamer? They're still watching an ad for 30 seconds. The ad is still in HD. In some cases, on NBC, they're on a DVR and they're skipping past the commercials. Over here, they have to watch the commercial. And it's cheaper, way cheaper, like pennies on the dollar cheaper to advertise online. And so if you start seeing that mass exodus of budgets for advertisers leaving the traditional broadcast cable space and moving over to platforms like this, that's when you start to see lobbying happening in the government, where you start having like this TV association suddenly spending tons of money on a campaign for someone who has promised that, hey, we're going to make sure that we're going to put regulations in place, like Germany, to make sure that this streaming or this other new emerging market doesn't have sort of as much wind underneath its sails as it otherwise might have. And that's when things really start to get dirty and ugly, for lack of a better term. So we're still in the infancy of this, and it's only going to get crazier. I mean, look, it started with games, but, there's a lot of stuff you can do. Like, I'm shocked, honestly, that Twitch has been so slow to spread its wings out into other stuff.
Right.
I mean, you're looking at Bob Ross before we went on air. And there's only a few examples of that so far. Like, it just launched IRL, where you can just stream your stuff doing whatever.
And they did the Power Rangers marathon to kick off the movie release.
Right.
There's something to be said for that. The question here is, those marathons have made a splash so far because they're unusual for Twitch to do.
Right.
If it becomes a thing they do all the time, you're going to get it lost in the noise.
Yeah, see, I'm not talking about stunts, though. I'm talking about creating a dedicated channel to political news commentary. Mm-hmm. Like, right now, all that stuff's kind of happening on YouTube.
That was kind of the original idea of the whole, because Twitch began as just sort of the Justin TV sort of.
Well, it's going back to Justin TV.
Yeah, it was originally just a video game-related branch of Justin TV.
Yeah, worst name for a company ever.
Yeah.
I don't know who thought they would ever succeed with a name like Justin TV.
Was it supposed to be like Just In? Like
I always thought that like the guy who founded it was named Justin.
Yeah. Probably could have used a hyphen or something.
Right. I really thought that's what it was.
Originally I did, but then I was like, oh, is this just... I thought it was some guy named Justin who streamed.
Yeah.
Basically. But then I figured later it was like, oh, it must be like this Just In.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. But no one ever said it like that. Everyone said Justin.
And I have a question, actually. I don't know the answer to this. Maybe someone in the chat does, or maybe you do. On YouTube, can you stream whatever you want, or is it just for gaming? You can.
Yeah. You can do whatever you want.
Oh, okay. So you can do a live show on YouTube
it's just like
on
YouTube.
politics or whatever.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So
I don't think YouTube has any restraint on what can be
streamed live.
One way or the other.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, then, in that case, YouTube's already there then.
Yeah. And a lot of people are using YouTube for that. I mean, people are doing their own little shows like that. Twitch, I mean, part of the reason Twitch has been slow to react to something like that, I think, is because they don't feel they need it. Like, they're so big and so functional on this one thing.
Yeah.
Creative is slowly been growing, and that was pretty small early on. It was they launched it with the Bob Ross channel, but now I think you look at the creative side, and it used to be kind of like, oh, it's just like 5 people knitting and like and now it's like, no, it's just anything you could possibly want to watch. And creative also has turned out to mean a lot of different things. So like people can kind of get away with it. It does
mean a lot of different things.
As long as you're knitting, you can talk about whatever you want. Basically.
Right.
So it's like you could do a politics show, except everybody's knitting.
Right.
And that counts under the creative banner.
Yep. And look, there's something to be said about diluting your brand. I mean, Twitch is known as gaming live streaming. That's what people think of. And that's even my mom is like, what's that Twitch thing where people play games and other people watch? That's what it's known for. YouTube is already established its brand as everything.
Yeah.
You can get everything on YouTube. And so it doesn't sort of stand out.
Well, it'll be interesting to see which one prevails in it. Because, tides can shift real fast. And on one hand, you want to be good at pick what you do well and do that well, like Twitch is doing. But on the other hand, as Major Kusanagi once said, over-specialize and you breed in weakness. And if they have no other direction to go, if the bottom for some reason falls out of the video game streaming market, I don't know why it would.
Yeah.
But then what do they do? They have to suddenly really hope that people want to watch crochet.
Yep. Or Bob Ross. Which, hey.
I mean, Bob Ross does well for them.
And he should. He's great. He's brilliant. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about the NES Classic Edition. Matt, did you ever get one?
No, I've never even seen one.
I've never seen one with my own 2 eyes.
I've seen one. Someone I was working with at a job had one in his office, but that's the only one I've ever seen in person. I've never seen one on a retail.
Actually,
shop.
I think I saw one in a trade show. I've never seen one in a store.
I only played it once. I played it once. His system, I played it, and it was fine.
Yeah.
But that's the only time I've ever seen one.
Do you have any interest in getting one?
No.
No?
I have all those games in various forms.
Yeah.
On 5 other systems.
But don't you think a lot of people that bought it could say the same thing?
Yeah, but they bought into it and I didn't. Basically, I mean, sure, if you want it, go ahead.
Do you wish you had bought one now, though?
No.
Even though now that they're discontinued and they've gone up, the eBay price for this thing has tripled in the last 48 hours since it was announced, and it's probably going to quadruple and quintuple.
Yeah, keep going. To get one, I probably would have had to go through more trouble than I care to go through.
Yeah.
So no. And I would never get around to selling it because I'm lazy that way. And I never, it's like you always buy stuff and hope it'll be a collectible, but then it becomes a collectible. And it's like, oh, I have it. I don't want to get rid of it. It's like, so I have no interest in having more copies of these games I already have copies of.
All right, so
the original cartridges in many cases.
Yeah. Let's talk now about why this happened, Matt. Why would Nintendo discontinue, honestly, one of its most popular products that it's released in the last 5 years?
Well, what I heard, and I don't know if
We got some intel coming from Matt Kyle right
I don't
here,
know if
people.
this is true or not, but this is what I heard, is that they licensed the third-party games on that for 6 months because they didn't of sale because they didn't think it was going to be this big of a hit. And so now they have, because the license is over, they have to pull the product and renegotiate the licenses to re-release it later.
Shouldn't, and I totally guess, probably the most plausible explanation I've heard, because nothing else makes any sense. Anything else makes no sense.
I mean,
whatsoever.
either that or Nintendo hates money.
Yeah.
Like, I don't.
Which we
I mean,
know is not the case.
there's a lot of talk about, like, you know, oh, they want us to buy these games on the Switch, and it's like, look, the Switch is not widespread enough to pull your other super successful product off the shelves in response to that. And also, if they were worried about that, why would they launch it like 4 months before the Switch comes out?
Right.
Like, that doesn't track.
Well, I think we can all agree that the NES Classic has been far more popular than Nintendo thought it would be.
Yeah,
But
I also think
far more popular than I thought it would be.
it is more popular than I thought. But also, like, do we know how popular it is? Because there's never been a sufficient amount of product in the retail pipeline.
We've never been given numbers
to see. You know, once you meet, it's like the Switch. It's like, we don't know yet. There's like 8 to 10 million Nintendo fanatics that'll buy anything Nintendo puts out, and we don't know if anyone beyond that is going to buy it. I mean, if this thing had been, you know, put in retail channels in sufficient numbers, I think it would have been a big outside the core demographic hit, in the sense of, like, you see, you know, it's like you see that on the shelf, you're Christmas shopping or whatever, you're like, oh, that's perfect for whatever game guy I know, or I remember that game, I want to play it, I'm going to get that. Like, it's just, you know, $60 retail. Not that anyone's paid that for one in like 6 months. Or whatever. It's just the right price point for an impulse nostalgia buy. And I think it would have been successful. But I don't know if we really know, because, like, they put so few out there.
I'll tell you, Matt, I am going. They're sending one last shipment out before the end of this month. I'm going to try to get one, because I think by the time I'm ready to retire, this thing's going to be worth crazy amounts of money.
I don't know how long the value will last, especially if they bring it out again.
Well,
I feel
that would kill it, obviously.
I feel that they're going to renegotiate the licenses and bring it out again.
But for a $60 risk,
oh, sure,
it's well worth it. I mean, it's.
But I'm just saying, I would sell it by, you know, pretty soon.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think this is going to be off the market forever. That's
Okay.
what I'm saying. I think they're going to bring it back again.
So, like I said, I think your explanation and the things that you kind of heard through the grapevine makes the most sense of anything that I've heard. But then my question becomes, why didn't Nintendo realize right away it was a huge hit and renegotiate those contracts immediately, so that it did not have that break in the retail chain?
Maybe they're trying and they haven't been able to come to agreements yet. I mean, who knows? We don't know.
So you think these third-party guys were like, "Oh, hold on a minute. That deal we signed with you at first was when we thought you'd sell a couple 100,000 of these things, but now
I mean, God knows
we want more money."
I mean, God knows what Konami's response was.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, Konami's probably so glad just to have its name mentioned with video games again that it's like, we'll just give it to you for free.
And again, also, let's not forget, Nintendo's the same company that the reason Wii Virtual Console stuff did not carry over to the Wii U is because the Wii Virtual Console games were only licensed as Wii executables.
Yeah.
Wii applications.
Right.
The license was not for something that could continue onward to future systems. That's how short-sighted they were about that.
Which means...
So the idea that something like this would happen again, not really that far-fetched.
It's actually not far-fetched at all, especially when you consider that I think we can, again, also agree that Nintendo, as soon as it came up with the idea for this product, it was not supposed to be a long-term product.
No.
It was supposed to be a special, fun promotion for the anniversary, goes out, does okay over the holidays. Maybe they sell it at places like Radio Shack.
And I also think
like
the other piece of evidence in favor of the license issue is the license theory is that they're also pulling the Famicom one. So something is happening.
Japan, right?
In Japan. So something is happening for them to pull this thing off the market completely. So to me, that says they've got something they got to figure out.
Nintendo's official statement was terrible, by the way.
I didn't see
It
that.
didn't provide any insight or information on why it's happening.
Was it just like, thanks for your interest in this thing?
And it says, and we apologize that it's been difficult to find, and that was it.
But wait for it.
Yeah. And then it said that we are sending out one more shipment before the end of the month. So, man, there might be, like, stabbings. People are going to get stuck trying to get the NES Classic.
What? So it was like, you're saying it's up to like $800,000 now?
What?
Like the price, if it's quadrupled, it was like selling for $200.
It went up 3 times already.
Yeah.
It's triple the price.
Wow.
Yeah, from where it was before they announced it.
Yeah, that might be worth stabbing somebody for.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like
yeah.
a $60 item that you can then flip for like $600.
Yeah.
There might be some bad stuff going down. So, hey, if you guys have been on the hunt, don't slack. I mean, this is your last chance. It might. I mean, look, you say you think they may re-release it. I'm a little reticent to agree with that because once you announce a product has been killed, it's really hard to kind of restart that machine again. And if anything, if Nintendo is anything, it is a shrewd business, and it handles its business meticulously and with care. And so for me, I feel like if Nintendo is saying this thing is discontinued, I think it might be discontinued for good.
Yeah, the Famicom announcement was much more worded to make it seem like it was temporary.
Yeah.
I don't think this is gone forever. I'll tell you what
they'll move on to the Super Nintendo next.
Well, I'll buy that.
Yeah.
The
I like the best console of all time.
I like the Super Nintendo better than the NES by a large margin.
Yeah, me too.
But like, I think this will be back, maybe by the end of the year, depending on how long the negotiations take. So I'm just saying, if you do get one, sell it before they announce that it's coming back.
Imagine when we're in like our 60s and 70s. Do you think they'll like reissue like the N64? You think they'll make like a little mini Nintendo 64?
Oh, I think that'll happen sooner than
Really?
you think.
Do you think the 3D era though kind of holds up for that stuff though?
Kinda.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
We'll talk about it in a minute.
There,
Actually,
yeah.
we're on the way to discuss that. So
I think the 3D era will be far. I mean, but again, the NES stuff is very nostalgia driven too. I mean, you put that in the hands of some kids, and like really, aside from the big one, aside from like Mario Brothers, Mario 3, maybe Mega Man 2. Like, I don't think a lot. You know, I can't see a lot of kids just like losing themselves in Star Tropics. You know?
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, let's move on. Now we're going to talk about an indie game that Matt has been playing this week.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of throwbacks.
Yeah, we both dipped our toes in some indie stuff this week. You've been playing Cosmic Star Heroine.
Yep.
And that is free for PlayStation Plus subscribers this month, is that right?
No.
I thought it was.
I don't think so. If it was, I got ripped off because
no,
I bought it.
It's Lovers in a Dangerous Space-Time
Yeah.
that's free. I can see where I got those two titles
Right.
mixed up.
It's it is like, I think it's like 20% off for PlayStation Plus, or it was a pre-order discount. It's full price now, $15. But the discount is still in play on Steam, and I suggest if you have a choice to get it on Steam because you will get bug fixes much faster, and that is a major issue with this game.
Yeah, tell us the tale, Matt.
So this is
a turn-based RPG.
It's a turn-based 16-bit style RPG by Zeboyd Games, the people who made Cthulhu Saves the World. It is, I would say, the influences are. It's mainly influenced by Phantasy Star. There's a lot of Phantasy Star in this game, which
it's
is
a sci-fi turn-based RPG,
which is super good for me. But it's, I would say, it's mainly influenced by Phantasy Star. There's Chrono Trigger. All the battles are on the screen. Like, there is no cutaway to the battle. It's like in Chrono Trigger, you run into the guy, everybody jumps into position, and you have your fight right there on the map. There is some Lunar. I would say there's some Lunar in terms of how the cutscenes are done and sort of the tone of the story. And there is Suikoden. In the sense that that's
quite a pedigree there.
There's some base building. There's some kind of political intrigue going on. So I would say those four. If you like Phantasy Star, Chrono Trigger, Lunar, and or Suikoden, you're going to want to give this one a look.
Wow.
It's very streamlined. It's very smart in terms of how it works. The battle system is frankly like nothing I've really ever played.
Wow. That's a big statement.
So the way it works, and we might see this here shortly, so every fight you begin with full life.
Okay.
There is no life or mana.
So when you finish a fight, your health goes back to maximum.
Your health goes back to maximum.
Okay.
So you start. So what you have is you have each character has abilities. You can equip 7 abilities, and then you have a rest ability. So you have 8 things you can do at once. And every time, with the exception of a couple of kind of repeatable moves, every time you use a move, that's it. It's exhausted, and then you have to use the rest button to use a turn to replenish all your abilities.
Okay.
Using abilities ups a style gauge. When the style gauge hits 100%, you can then your next attack or next whatever you do is enhanced. All the enemies have elemental weaknesses of some. Most of them have elemental weaknesses of some kind. There's a lot of status effects you can put on them. and they get stronger the longer the battle goes on. So it's very much in your interest to finish battles quickly. And the system is set up that your characters enhance each other and enhance their own moves in a way that you also, if you're smart, can basically battle these things very quick. I mean, for instance, and I'll get into why I fought this guy twice, but there's a giant robot you fight at one point, and the first time I fought him, it took about 7 or 8 turns to beat him, and when I had to redo that battle because of a crash, I beat him in 2 turns. Maybe it was 3 turns, but it was much, much faster than the last one because I knew what I was doing. I knew what the weaknesses were.
You got better at the game.
I knew how to interact with my different characters. I mean, you're doing, your standard attack in this is gonna, without any enhancements, is gonna do maybe 100 damage, 150 damage early on, and then if you play your cards right with like one particular character, he's got like an uppercut move that is enhanced by a couple different things. If you do it at the maximum of his style, you're gonna do like 6,000 damage.
Whoa!
I mean, if you play stuff right, and there are multiple difficulty levels going up to Superstar or Super Spy. Super Spy, like it took me 14 tries to beat the first enemy in the tutorial.
Wow.
So if you want a challenge that does not cut you any slack, this game is here for you.
Wow. Is the whole game that challenging?
On that difficulty level, yes. The others, no. I mean, play on there's a super easy one, there's a standard one, there's a harder one.
How is it adjusting the difficulty? Is it just damage given out, damage taken?
Yeah, damage given out, and also abilities that the enemies have.
Oh, okay. So it actually changes.
The enemies do have different abilities and different things they can do once you go past up to heroine different. So I think it's agent something. It's like easy, normal, and then hard is heroine, and then very hard is super spy. And once you hit heroine difficulty, everybody gets new moves, and it's a different game to a large degree. That one seems to be kind of the sweet spot. I mean, if you're kind of, I'd say that's about as difficult as like Persona 5. Like it's like it's a challenge, but you don't feel like you're not going to live.
Well, Persona 5, it's like it's really hard. Mm-hmm. Then it's really easy for like 12 hours.
Right.
And then you go into a dungeon and just get wiped out.
But like in terms of like how the tension of the dungeon, like it's like that. Except you never feel like you're unprepared, because part of the challenge of Persona 5 is like, oh, we're out of items, we can't replenish our MP anymore. This one, you get everything back, to the point that even items in this game, you don't use them up. You have a certain number of equip slots for your items section, and you can equip items. You have a potion, restores 100 hit points, you can use it once per battle. Just make sure you use it smart.
So it's actually like a nice sort of strategy angle to this.
Yes.
It's almost borderline strategy RPG.
Yeah, and even when like the strategy isn't based around surviving, it's fun because it's based around kicking things ass as fast as humanly possible.
Yeah.
It is a huge cast.
It encourages you to speedrun it.
Yeah, a little bit. It is. I haven't finished it for a reason I'll get into shortly, but people who are finishing it saying it's like 16 to 20 hours.
Wow.
It's not a giant.
How much is it selling for?
15.
Not bad.
It's not like a Suikoden level like 70, 80 hour game, but it is a respectable length. Writing's decent. It's got a very Phantasy Star flavored story. It gets right to the point. The pacing is just boom, boom, boom. There is none of the standing around, there's none of the standard JRPGs standing around. Everybody's talking about like whether they should do this and what their feelings are and whether their mother is alive. And it's all just like, oh, like this thing happened. We're all betrayed. Let's go to the nightclub and find our friends and get out of here. It's like me. It's just go, go, go,
go. Right.
Now the problem is this thing has bugs all through it. It has been a very rough release by Zipwood Games' own admission.
And I will say, if there's one genre that I can tolerate bugs in the least, it's probably JRPGs.
So when I got to the end of the first major section, as I was leaving the what would be called the dungeon, I guess, a little thing pops up that says, thanks for playing the beta. There will be more contents coming soon. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I bought the full game. And it turned out that they had uploaded the wrong version of the game.
Oh my god!
They had to do an update, and later, I mean, it was literally hours later after release, but they eventually got it out.
That is the worst mistake.
Not good.
So did your save that you
save did carry over?
Oh, thank God.
And then so now, so I'm in chapter 5, and there's a boss battle against a giant robot, and then you have to use the giant robot to fight a giant monster. And every single time I kill the giant monster, the game hard crashes. Doesn't matter what move I use, doesn't matter how I beat him.
But you're not losing your saves or anything.
Not losing my save, but I can't get past this boss battle because the game literally stops working after I beat the boss.
Now, are you the only one who's having this issue? Have you figured out if...
No, I actually have been posting on NeoGAF about it with the guy who made it, with Robert Zaboyd. He's in the thread, being very helpful and very supportive of telling people what's going on and when to expect things and all that.
That's good.
And honest about what's happening. Yeah. That's how I know what I just told you about the
if he admitted that they uploaded the beta, he's honest.
So he's been very straightforward about it. And
doesn't Microsoft or Sony do any checks on this stuff?
They can't do. I mean, they
should play it.
Well, yeah, but if they say this is what we're uploading, that's what they uploaded. Sony can't make them upload the right version. They get the version from the developer.
Right, but then they should play it.
That's not how it works.
It should work that way.
Because
Sony's the one selling the product.
Right, but
Sony is
they
on
play
the hook.
builds of it, but what you upload to the server to be bought and downloaded that comes from the developer.
Well, the way I look at it is
they had the right version, they just did the wrong one. The right one went up a few hours later.
Right, but they uploaded the wrong version of the game.
Somebody hit the wrong button or whatever.
Well, normally,
this is what crunch time does to you, folks.
No, you're right. But what I'm saying is that Sony should have a process in place where it gets that final version for upload a week before it's supposed to be uploaded.
Or, for instance,
somebody plays it to make sure it works.
So it was supposed to go up, Tuesday morning or whatever it was on Steam, and it wasn't up. It wasn't up. Maybe it was Monday. I can't remember which one. Wasn't up. And I was like, where is it? It turned out Valve had blocked it from going up because someone had set the profile on it to say that it supported cloud saves, and it didn't.
Oh.
So they had to change that, resubmit to Valve, and hope that Valve got around to it in hours and not weeks.
Right.
And luckily they did. They got it up later that day. But that is little things like that. You set the wrong switch or flag on something, and it blows everything out of the water. So right now I'm basically waiting for... Because the thing about...
How do you make that mistake, though? It's like, look,
you
know. And a group of 3 of your friends or 4 or whatever, handful of your friends have worked on this project for a couple years, poured your heart and soul into it, and then in the end, you just make a couple stupid mistakes that could seriously damage the...
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I mean, you're right, but at the same time, I've never crunched for 2 months and been up 48 hours when I had to do that, so I'm not going to judge on that.
It's just crazy to think about.
Oh yeah, but it's just
all the little things they had to do right to actually make the game.
To get there, and then So the problem, so I'm playing on PS4. So the problem is right now that if I was having this problem on the Steam version, they can update that over and over as much as they want, but because you have to go through Sony's approval process and all that, it's going to be a while because they're waiting to have a bunch of bugs they can fix and then put out a new patch. So basically, I'm stuck in the game unless I want to buy the Steam version. So that's why I'm saying if you're going to buy this, I recommend the Steam version because here's the thing, it's really good.
Yeah.
I really like it. It's a lot of fun, and I'm interested in the story, and I like the characters, and I like how everybody plays, and I like how all the different characters work together.
Combat system sounds great.
It's cool. It's really
sounds different.
Good. Yeah, and they've really kind of from what I hear, kind of bet the company on this one a little bit. So it's got to sell well, but it's in a bad state right now. Hopefully, it doesn't Bought a pig in the poke on this one, Abby. Hope it doesn't blow up on the stand, as Sam Waterston might say.
So $15.
$15 right now.
Recommend the Steam version.
Steam version's 20% off right now, I think.
So there's 2 reasons to recommend it.
Another good reason to get Steam. And again, it seems like it's going to be maybe a little rough going for the first week or 2. But these guys really made something that nobody else is trying to do, and they've done it, outside of the game-breaking bugs that happen here and there. They made something special, I think,
and they're responsive.
And
they aren't running away from their mistakes, trying to hide like a certain other indie developer we know.
Yeah, clearly Zaboyd Games is the opposite of the anti-Hello Games.
Exactly.
But it's what's here is really fun and really cool, and it would have to be for me to keep running into this crash bug and not be furious at the game. But I feel my only impatience is that I want to play more of it, so that's not a bad thing. So be advised. It's a buggy product right now, at least what I played on the PS4. Maybe not so much on Steam because they can update that faster. But if you have any love for these old 16-bit RPGs, like, don't miss this one.
All right, fair enough. Let's move along. Battlefront II, one of the most awkward debuts of all time.
Yeah.
Was it Thursday?
I would say it was Wednesday or Thursday, yeah.
So it was late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning that the initial teaser trailer was leaked.
Right. But it was the full teaser trailer, not the teaser for the teaser trailer.
Right.
Which is not to be confused with the reveal trailer, which came out today.
Right, yeah. So they had trailers of 3 different lengths.
Right.
They had like a 15-second, a 30-second, and then the full shebang that came out today.
Yeah.
The middle one is the one that came out first. And then yesterday they put out the shortest one, which was a tease to the full one that was coming out today. I'm sitting at home. I'm preparing for the show today. I'm clicking refresh over and over, hoping to get that full trailer before I leave to come here. It didn't happen. I get here, setting up for the show. You roll in, and you're like, hey, did you see that Battlefront? I'm like, which one? You're like, the full one that just came out like an hour ago. I was like, oh, God. So it was a mad scramble for us to get that trailer and get it into the show, but we did it, and Sam's got it ready to rock. Here it is. So, Matt, biggest Star Wars fan I know. You actually have more details than I have as well.
Yeah, because I watched some of the live stream before I came over here. They were doing a live stream from Star Wars Celebration with the developers and the writer of the novel and a couple of... But
so, Matt, as the biggest Star Wars fan I know, also probably an expert in Star Wars video games, give us the rundown on Battlefront 2 from what you've learned so far.
So this is what we're seeing here is from the campaign. There is a single-player campaign in this game, unlike the last one. It focuses on a leader of an elite TIE fighter squadron called Inferno Squad. That's her right there. Her name is Iden something.
So it's about the Empire.
It is about the Empire. What is her damn name? Hang on.
Is this the first video game campaign to focus on the Empire?
No, there have been others.
Where the lead protagonist was on the side of the Empire?
Well, yeah. Iden Versio. That's her name.
Okay.
It's not because technically, like in the old Battlefronts, you could play like the campaign in Battlefront 2. The old Battlefront 2, you played as part of the 501st, which started as a clone trooper, thing, and then you eventually became Vader's Fist and were part of the Empire through that. It was a very light story, mostly just told by narrations by Tamura Morrison. And then in TIE Fighter, obviously, you play a TIE Fighter pilot who becomes part of the Emperor's elite squadron.
That should have been an obvious one. But there really isn't like a story.
Well, I mean, Force Unleashed to some degree. The beginning, you start as Vader's apprentice. Eventually, obviously, you turn on that. But but this is the first one. As far as I can tell, the very beginning of this trailer, they show the First Order fighters leaving the Starkiller base, and you hear her say, "I've waited 30 years for this." So I'm wondering if this is going to start like kind of pre-original trilogy era when she's training. She'll be in the original trilogy Civil War as like a full-fledged warrior, and then you'll kind of follow her trying to get revenge, joining the First Order, and being part of sort of, as an older woman, being part of the push against the Resistance in Force Awakens or around that time. That would be kind of a way to tie all 3 eras together because the content in this game in multiplayer does cover all 3 eras.
Right. That was kind of the only information they really shared with the first teasers.
That and the footage of the game they showed on the stream indicates that there are classes again.
Okay.
In the multiplayer.
Right.
So this is done. The campaign and the story is done by Motive, EA Motive, which is Jade Raymond's team.
First game.
First game they're doing, and it's they credited the writer they credited on the live stream was Mitch Dyer.
Do you guys know who Mitch Dyer is?
Mitchie D.
Mitchie D. Right. He was an editor for IGN. And I don't even think he was a senior level editor. I believe he was just like maybe a reviews editor or something in that area.
That. I mean, I knew his name and I associate him with IGN. He was.
Well, yeah, he was at IGN for quite a while.
Yeah, he was definitely part of the core team.
Oh yeah, he was a full-time editorial staffer, but he wasn't a senior editorial guy. Mm-hmm. And he went from writing video game reviews for IGN and doing podcasts to being the lead writer on probably the biggest Star Wars video game ever made.
Yep. Not bad.
That's quite a leap.
Quite a leap. And then to even enhance that, they said on the live stream, the story in this game is canon.
That's mind-boggling.
What happens in this game is canon to the Star Wars universe.
I mean, Mitch is probably mid to late 20s, I'm guessing.
Yeah, maybe. It might be 30.
Is he?
I don't know. I don't know much about Mitch.
Yeah, I've only met him.
Never met him.
He's a really nice guy. I've met him a couple times. He was great. But still, that's a shock to hear someone that young is writing Star Wars canon.
Apparently he knows Star Wars backwards and forwards the way I know it. So it sounds, it's probably in good hands.
Yeah.
Because the other thing is like, people sometimes will be like, I don't want someone who knows tons about Star Wars and knows all the expanded universe. The expanded universe was bad, and it wasn't. Here's the thing. Even knowing the bad parts of the old expanding universe means you're not going to repeat them.
Right. You want to know the bad.
You want someone who knows what has happened.
Yeah.
And knows not to go there again. So,
or just knows how to not mess up the canon. Knows what's occurred already, so that there aren't conflicts.
And we've seen a lot of stuff in the new canon that is taking ideas from the old expanding universe and taking the good and leaving the bad behind and incorporating that in the new stuff. We've seen that with Grand Admiral Thrawn in the Rebels TV show, which is having its final season this year.
Yeah.
Not sad, really, but it's just I like that show. And
I never watched it.
It's really good, and it's also nice. Of course, it's nice after the Clone Wars was sort of unceremoniously cut off to have Dave Filoni finally getting to end a show properly.
Right.
But yeah, this looks awesome to me. Like, frankly, the Imperial perspective is great. They talked about, like you'll see in right here where like the Death Star blows up. And they wanted to capture the idea of, like, what if you were a soldier who believed in the Empire on the ground, and you think, as the guy behind her says right here, now what do we do? Like, what happens now?
It's crazy, though, to think about that, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I almost feel like they're trying to create sympathy for the Empire.
Somewhat, but and
I don't want to have sympathy for the Empire. I hate the Empire.
Well, it's not about sympathy for the Empire so much as the different perspective,
right?
And
she's
yes,
just a grunt pilot or whatever.
She's an elite pilot. She's one of the best.
Right,
but the key is she's a true believer, and the story is about, like, what is that like? How do you keep because like I think they talked about right before I left, so I didn't see the end of this conversation, but they talked about how she comes from a planet which is not occupied by the Empire. We think about the Empire occupation as being like a forceful sort of like occupation of Poland kind of thing, because the Empire is Nazis.
Yeah, I mean it's a metaphor.
Yeah. I mean you're really coming off of that from the original Star Wars, and but they're I guess where she comes from was not an oppressed occupation. It was more of a benevolent rule for whatever reason, or at least she comes from somewhere where she didn't see the dark side of the Empire.
Right. Got you.
And for what I mean,
maybe that's what the story's about. Is her discovering.
That could be it too. It's going to be interesting to see how they balance that. It's also
I'm intrigued. I like it. I like the idea.
Well, the most interesting angle on that is if you let's say you're like a random guy in the Empire and you want to because they're trying to kind of get around the idea of there had to be heroes and idols in the Imperial ranks that these people looked up, because in the original Star Wars you've got Biggs and Luke and those guys wanting to join the Academy, and partly why they want to join it's the Imperial Academy, it's the Imperial Pilot Academy. You're going to become TIE fighter pilots,
right?
And part of the appeal there is obviously get off their backwater planet and get away somehow.
Yeah.
And the story that they cut out of Biggs is he became a TIE fighter pilot and then he jumped ship to a rebellion freighter after he learned what the Empire was really up to. But the question that this story is going to apparently ask is what is it like to be someone who never had that revelation that these people are doing some really nasty stuff? And my question is, if you say you're a random dude in the Empire, if you saw the Emperor, crazy looking old sorcerer dude, who you probably just based on the performance of Return of the Jedi, kind of a dirty old man, sort of I don't want to be in the room alone with him sort of thing. Yeah. Would that guy ever be able to inspire you?
No.
To fight to the death?
Right.
Against a Wookiee?
Well, I don't think he has to. I think he can use his mind control to...
Right. I mean, that'll be interesting to see, because the old EU had a whole thing with this thing called battle meditation, which actually comes from the old Zahn books and was incorporated in Knights of the Old Republic and those games and stuff, which as sort of like a buff sort of thing. But the idea was, is to try to explain why you kill one old guy. and an empire that spans thousands, if not millions, of worlds suddenly stops.
Right.
Why did that all happen? They've still got all these giant ships, even if the Death Star. And the idea was that he's using battle meditation to make everybody really good at fighting, and once he dies, everybody sucks.
Or to make them believe him.
Right.
And follow him.
That could
and
be
support him. I mean, who knows?
So they haven't really delved into that in the new, the Disney era canon.
Tauntauns, gotta love that.
Yeah, Tauntaun's, riding by these days. There's a star, some kind of star destroyer. Either it looks like the shipyards at Kuat. And then, of course, you have Force Awakens era stuff.
Yeah.
They did talk about, right before I left, talked about playing as Luke Skywalker and Kylo Ren. I don't know if they meant that as part of the campaign or in multiplayer. I figure
it looked like they showed Luke in the campaign in the trailer.
Maybe. Because it looks like the campaign's going to cover a lot of time, like a bunch of eras. And I'm into that. Like, it's a side of things, we don't really see much even in general over the last 40 years of Star Wars, and certainly we haven't seen that perspective in the new post-Disney acquisition canon. So it could be real interesting. It could get real dark, and it could lead to some, because also I don't know if anyone's seen the Last Jedi teaser that went up this week. That also has a lot of, Luke narrates most of that, and there's a lot of talk about how, there's the light and the dark, and there's so much more. Like, they're really pushing the idea that there's more to the Force than the Jedi and the Sith. And Rogue One did that too, with the blind monk,
which I finally watched, by the way.
Who is not a Jedi.
I finally watched it.
And
it was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
wasn't amazing.
It wasn't amazing, but it was a hell of a third act.
The last hour, holy cow. It was real slow.
So they're pushing.
It was a slow burn, but that last hour, man, it was worth the other.
So Lucasfilm has been actively for the last couple of years pushing the idea that there's more to the Force than good versus evil, than Jedi versus Sith, and this to me looks like the same. Because again, as any devotee of Knights of the Old Republic 2 knows, Star Wars is at its most interesting and arguably at its most mature when it's really looking at the shades of gray between the space opera good versus evil story.
Yep.
And this could be a really cool look. Also, I love TIE fighters, and I'm happy to play a TIE pilot.
Yeah, for sure.
If I'm being super honest.
Yeah. How do you feel about this being the first game from Motive? Any concerns there? It is Jade Raymond.
I don't have any doubts about Jade Raymond.
Well, it's not just her.
No,
there are hundreds of people that are also working on the game.
But she's running the show, and she knows she's worked on very high-profile stuff in the past. I like most of what she's done. She knows what she's doing. She's a giant Star Wars fan. And if there's anyone I have to have in charge of a Star Wars story who isn't Amy Hennig, she's pretty far up there. So
in charge of a story, really?
Yeah.
I don't know about that. I mean, I obviously respect her abilities as a project manager. And
that's what I'm talking about. Like I believe she, as a Star Wars fan and a project manager, will have the know-how to and experience to look at what's being written and what's being put into this game and know whether it's good or bad, whether that's the way to go with it.
I think she'll know whether it's good or bad, whether she has the power to say this isn't ready.
Oh, well, that's a different story, but they've been working on these things for a while.
Well, Jade just came on to EA last year, didn't she?
Was it?
Yeah.
That soon?
Yeah.
Well, they didn't have to build an engine.
Right. And they're just making a campaign. They aren't worrying about the rest of the game as well.
Look, I'm just happy they didn't give the campaign to DICE.
No, yeah. I think we can all agree with that one. I think we're all in agreement.
Let someone else try.
Yeah. And it's always dicey when you have one team doing the multiplayer and the other team doing the campaign.
Well, that's the thing is, like, I feel
but
like...
obviously DICE can handle multiplayer.
Right. I feel like they don't have to be particularly beholden to DICE's multiplaler on this one.
Yeah.
So they're just going to do...
I hope they're not.
What they're going to do what they do. They have the engine. They have the assets. It looks insane.
Does it look any better than the last game, though?
I think the lighting looks a little better.
Maybe a little.
Because remember, the Endor stuff is the tour de force of...
and it was with the trailers for the last one, too. I mean, but it doesn't look that much better to me than...
I think the lighting looks better, for sure. No question. I mean, there's not much else.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Battlefront looks great.
There's a lot of
it's already a great looking.
And there's
game.
a lot of particle stuff happening with the snow kicking up and the water kicking up. There's a lot happening on each screen on the screens here. It looks a little better. It doesn't look like revolutionary better like the last one. And we're like, what?
Well, you wouldn't expect that anyway.
No, but it's a refinement and it's there for sure.
I mean, look, the first game already looked great.
Right.
It's like
I'm sure also to see like the real difference on this, you're gonna have to play it on a high-end PC anyway.
Yeah.
Which I will. because I didn't care so much because it was all multiplayer, and I know I have more multiplayer friends on like PS4, which is why I got Battlefront on that. But for this one, for the single-player campaign, we're going to just go as pretty as we can make it.
Well, I'm sure over the next month and a half, 2 months, we're going to hear a ton about this game. In fact, probably if we could have stuck around and watched the rest of that presentation, we'd have a lot more to talk about now. But if we did miss some stuff, we'll touch back on it next week and then wait for E3, where I'm sure it's going to be just blown out to smithereens. So,
oh yeah,
I'm excited.
Mm-hmm.
I am,
and I didn't know if I would be.
Yeah.
For a new Battlefront this soon.
Well, look, the one thing that really bothered me about the last one is it didn't have a campaign.
Right.
This one has a campaign. It's also being helmed by somebody who in the past has built campaigns that I really liked. Mm-hmm. So, to me, that's all gravy. You honestly, I was a little nervous about sort of playing from the perspective of the Empire. You've completely changed my mind on that, just with your knowledge of Star Wars and kind of proposing different scenarios that might come to pass. I'm all in. I'm excited for this game. Hopefully you guys are as well. Let's move along. We're going to talk next about Scorpio, and we're going to talk very briefly about this. This week, Gamasutra, out of nowhere, got his hands on the first images of the Xbox Scorpio dev kit. Now, keep in mind, this is a dev kit, and it's the one right in front there. And I love this photo because those are all the Xbox dev kits ever. So you can see the very first Xbox with the green clear top. And you can see all the Xbox 360 dev kits, and then the two Xbox Ones, and then Scorpio in front there. So it's very easy to say, oh, it's just a dev kit. Don't get too bent out of shape over it. But if you look at all those dev kits,
they all look like
what the final hardware looked like.
More or less.
And so more than 50%, I'm saying what you're looking at right there is Xbox Scorpio. Probably in a different color scheme, maybe not. I mean, the color schemes they used for their dev kits for the other Xbox Ones, they weren't. They ended up being the real.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect it to be white.
I wouldn't either.
Maybe it's all black.
But if you think about it, launch Xbox black, Xbox One S white, and maybe they're trying to combine the two.
Maybe I think it'll be all black, just because to avoid confusion.
Okay. So that's color. What about the form factor of that, though?
Yeah, it's pretty much in line with what they've been doing.
Why? Why is just a box?
Probably because most people just don't look at their damn system that often.
Yeah?
It's a thing that goes in the shelf, and you put the disc in, and you play the game, and that's it. I mean,
you don't care about console form factor?
Not really. I mean, I like it when they look cool, but it's like, does it matter to me? No. Am I going to not buy a system because it doesn't look cool? No. It's not a thing. I mean, yeah, I guess you want it to be a sexy piece of hardware or whatever, but it's not a deal breaker for me.
You don't think the average consumer, though, cares about how it looks? Because look, we have every console, and so they all kind of blend together in your entertainment center. But for a lot of people, underneath their TV, they have their cable or satellite box.
If they cared that much about how something looked, the Wii wouldn't have sold 100 million units.
Well, I think
it's a white box. There's nothing to it.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point, actually. So you don't think it makes any difference what the Scorpio looks like?
No, I think that's an enthusiast thing. I mean, it would be cool if it was a more interesting design, if it had a little bit of a sleekness to it, maybe. But if it doesn't, it's going to live or die on its games.
Oh, for sure. I mean, hardware always does. But it was one of the big stories of this week, and I just thought we'd take a look at it. Actually, can you go back to that still image real quick, Sam? Size-wise, it looks like the same size as the original Xbox One.
Yeah.
There's perspective going on there, so obviously it's going to be bigger in the picture. But
it looks more closer to the slim size to me.
You think?
Slim's on the left, right?
Yeah.
It looks more like slim size, maybe a little taller. It looks like it's between the two to me.
It looks, to me, from the perspective and everything, it looks almost exactly the size as the launch Xbox One. Because you figure that back it's going to be smaller in the image because it's farther away. But if you actually extrapolate that out with the lines, it looks like they line up. But I'm okay with that. Hey, if they can squeeze...
I think width is about the same as the launch Xbox One, but I think it's shorter.
It might be.
I don't think it's as tall.
But hey, if they can get all that kit, plus an internal power supply, into a box that's the same size as the original Xbox One, I'm totally cool with that. I have no problem with it. I'd be happier if it was smaller, but totally cool with that. And here's a stack of them, which also leads me to believe, it's like you can see they're mass producing these things at this point. I really think that's what Scorpio is going to look like. Colors.
I mean, I don't see. I mean, I don't see them like breaking from their
rectangular
thing. I mean, maybe. I mean, the only thing I think see maybe like the color might be a little, give it a little pop somehow. I'd like to see a black and red system. I know the green is their thing, but I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit of a. I don't know. Maybe I'm watching too much Fast and the Furious.
I'm wondering too what the name of it's going to ultimately be.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly didn't expect it to have like a scorpion tail on the back or anything.
Well, they already said it's not going to be called Scorpio no matter what. So they're going to come up with a new name. I think the nomenclature for that will be really important because
the Xbox Boom.
Right, because Microsoft even came out this week and said, it's not really about generations anymore.
Right. Basically
saying it's the stuff that Pactor's been saying ever since we launched Pactor Factor is that generations are going away, and that's essentially what Microsoft said this week when these images came out and after the stuff with Eurogamer and Digital Foundry that it did.
The Xbox 4000.
But seriously, like whatever it names it is.
I mean, Xbox 4K would be the most straightforward marketing name. That, like, just to be like, hey, this says 4K,
and that would be
what it's here to do.
It would also be the fourth Xbox.
Yeah, 4K.
That makes too much sense.
Yeah,
maybe that's exactly where they're headed.
And then everyone's going to call it the fork.
Yeah, it's better than X-Bone.
Better than the bone. I'm still amused that they didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
They were so angry and shocked when that happened.
It's still in our admin on Sifted. It's called X-Bone. And I remember when Brent first set it up, I sent him an email and I'm like, take that out. I'm like, just call it Xbox One. I'm like, I don't like that a derogatory term for it's in there.
It's kind of a pet name.
Well, right. Well, then he wrote back, okay, I'll do, and he never did.
No. Well, he's also like, I mean, it's a Bay Area thing, but like there's a radio station in the Bay Area that plays like, I mean, they say it's kind of oldies, but it's actually music when we were kids. It's how like oldies are like Metallica now.
Yeah.
It's 1077.
Think about that.
The Bone.
Yeah.
And so like for years, 1077. The Bone. Like to me, the Bone is like a cool nickname for the Xbox.
Right, but I think it was originally
intended as an
derogatory.
Insult, for sure.
Yeah, it was a derogatory term.
But I always thought they should have embraced it.
Right.
Just be like, it's the Bone.
Maybe they should just call it the X Bone and just separate the X and the. All right, and again, we're going to be getting a lot more on that in the coming 6-8 weeks. Actually, E3 is not that far away now. 8 weeks probably till E3. So it won't be long. We're going to have all our questions are going to be answered on a lot of stuff coming up very soon. Let's move on. We're going to talk next about Uncharted 4. So we got a new trailer for the Uncharted 4 story DLC, which actually that's probably not even the right thing to call it because it's going to be a standalone product.
Yeah, it's almost like an expansion.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even, it's its own game, set in the same universe.
Well, it's like I'm thinking about, like, I'm stuck on the Star Wars thing now, but I'm thinking about, like, Mysteries of the Sith for Jedi Knight 1.
Right.
Which is, like, it's a whole standalone story. It just uses the same engine, but it's an expansion pack.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that.
So, new information came out in addition to the new trailer. Actually, the information came out before the trailer. Over 10 hours long, although some people have tried to debunk that Naughty Dog ever said that. Essentially, Naughty Dog just never confirmed that it was over 10 hours long. It never said it wasn't over 10 hours long. And the price that's being bandied about right now is $40, Matt.
Yep.
How do you feel about that?
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
But it's, again, I've paid more money than that for shorter games that were probably of lesser quality.
You've paid $60 for a game that was 10 hours or yeah, I guess I have many times actually. Yeah.
That's pretty long for a single player campaign.
I guess that's about average, I think, for a single player campaign.
I think about average is about 8 for about 8 hours. For your average like shooter action oriented thing. I mean, to the point that
right, but the idea is that you're getting this multiplayer suite that comes with it that is replayable. For
that's not why I bought any Uncharted game ever. So.
Yeah, a lot of people. A lot of people won't say that they bought it primarily for multiplayer, but I think a lot of people would also say that having that multiplayer there helped convince me to buy it on day one, knowing that once I finished, I had a lot more to play. There are some people that love Uncharted's multiplayer.
Yeah,
by the way. I'm not one of them, but
yeah, I didn't play a single second of multiplayer in 3 or 4.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple people when I worked at GT that loved the Uncharted multiplayer. Like, preferred to play it more than like any other multiplayer. So it certainly has its fans.
Or Last of Us. I never played much of that either.
Yeah.
But again, it's like, yeah, it's pricey, but when you think about what, even as someone who wasn't over the moon on Uncharted 4, my main reason I wasn't over the moon was I didn't care about Sam. And this is about Chloe, and I like Chloe a lot. And so, yeah, I think I'm in. I feel like $40 is a pretty small price to pay for the level of quality that Naughty Dog tends to deliver.
I think it's too much.
Might be too much, but I don't know. There's like probably 3 developers on the planet that could charge that kind of premium for their stuff, and I'd say Naughty Dog's one
And
of
I
them.
feel like that's exactly what it's doing.
You're paying a Naughty Dog tax to some degree, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like they're saying, look, like, we know that you guys are going to buy this. They probably know they could charge. They're probably looking at it like, our fans will pay $60 for this. We're going to give them a break and charge $40.
Probably.
I mean, and I get it. I mean, their fans would pay $60 for this, even if it is 10 hours long or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Although, when I first heard 10 hours, I was like, holy crap, 10 hours? And then they're like, for $40, and I was like, $40? It was this weird string of emotions that happened when I found out about it. But, I mean, I don't know if we've had DLC for a console game that costs $40. And I guess maybe Naughty Dog's trying to change the whole perspective and not call it DLC. And in fact, they don't call it DLC. Mm-hmm. It's not even called Uncharted 4, It's just Uncharted and no number in there at all. So it's like they're trying to make people at least subconsciously think that this is this whole standalone new product, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just like, in theory, it could be about the size and robustness of a standard Uncharted campaign. They just don't charge you $20 for the multiplayer.
Well, the first Uncharted, I guess. Ones after that were a little longer than that.
Yeah, they're 15-ish hours.
Yeah.
But if I'm being honest, a few of those hours dragged a little bit.
Oh, yeah, at the end when you're going into like your 10th room in a row, you have to clear out all the enemies, and they're just adding rooms to pad out the length of the game, essentially. So you're okay, $40. If it does end up being around 10 hours, you're okay paying $40 for that 10 hours.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I'll do it because I have to. I'm not okay with it though. I think that's.
I mean, I certainly would prefer it was $30, but it's not going to stop me from buying it.
Right. I feel like that's taken advantage of your fans a little bit. Yeah. Some of them are glutton for punishment, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like, that level of fidelity doesn't come for free.
Yeah.
So if that's what they think their product is worth, that's what it's worth. And if you want to pay it, or don't pay it. And not to get all libertarian on you, but the market will decide.
Right. Or just don't pay it all and wait for it to be cheaper.
Right.
And then the next time Naughty Dog tries to do something like this,
they'll be like, "Oh, we didn't sell to our targets," and
it'll be what it should be, which should be like $25 or $30 max.
Yeah.
At least that's my opinion. That's what I would feel comfortable paying for.
I mean, yeah, it's a few hours less, but like, look, they're still putting the same level of effort. They're still putting that amount of production work. They're still spending a ton of money to make this thing happen. Like, it's not a crazy price.
I think it's a crazy price.
I don't.
They're not spending anywhere near as much on this as they did for the first Uncharted, though. All the engine and everything is there. A lot of the work has been done already.
Yeah, you still got to hire all the talent. You got to do all the mocap. You got to do all the little like nitty gritty stuff. You got to model every damn Chinese food container that falls off the barrel when you walk past it for 5 seconds. There's a lot. I mean, these people work hard on these things.
I'll be interested to see what the response is in the comments for this episode to see if people are okay with $40 for a 10-hour campaign.
I mean, I'm not begging for it to be $40. Like, make it $40 or you're ripping yourselves up. It's like,
but you're saying you're okay with it.
I'm fine with sure. If you want to charge that, fine. I mean, would I be fine with, like, I don't know, EA charging $40 for a standalone Mirror's Edge expansion? No, I would not buy that. But
what
these
about
guys,
a standalone 10-hour campaign for Battlefront 2 for $40?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, if it proved good the first time, I mean, I wouldn't buy like this campaign blindly.
Yeah.
But if this one's awesome and they want to charge me $40 for a Battlefront Mysteries of the Sith expansion, yeah, I'd think about that.
All right, let's move on. We're going to talk lastly about Yooka-Laylee. Full disclosure, I was a big fan of Rare's games during the N64 era. I was a big fan of 3D platformers during the N64 era. Mm-hmm. I don't know that you could be a fan of the genre in any other era because
it was kind of its time.
Yeah, I mean, the genre just kind of disappeared.
I was a big fan of Banjo-Kazooie. I did not like Banjo-Tooie as much, and I hated Donkey Kong 64.
Okay.
My bona fides.
I mean, I would say Mario 64 is probably my favorite of that era.
My favorite is Banjo, and to the point that actually before this game came out, I booted up the Rare Replay Banjo-Kazooie, first one, and played a couple worlds of that just to kind of remind myself a little bit and kind of like get the feel on it, like remember what I was playing back then and what I like about that, and then like so I could compare it directly to Yooka-Laylee. And that turns out maybe it wasn't fair to Yooka-Laylee to do that. But
of Rare's platformers for the N64, I would go Conker's Bad Fur Day.
number one.
Yeah. Ooh. For me, Kazooie and Tooie are tough.
I didn't like Tooie very much.
Well, we're going to get into why you didn't like it, and I can totally understand that. And I get that it was almost bloated in some ways. Mm-hmm. And more confusing than it needed to be.
Tooie and Donkey Kong 64 to me, are emblematic of how Rare just... There's a point at which you can't just keep making it quote-unquote bigger and better. Yeah. You know, it's just like it got out of hand. And Conker I like a lot more because it brought it all back to a more constrained location. And, I mean, it was pretty funny for the time. I don't know if I'd find it funny now if I went back and played it again.
Well, you've heard all the jokes.
Heard all the jokes a lot, and I'm not like 22 anymore.
Yeah.
I'd just be like, that bee's just disgusting. Like,
Yeah, so I would go Conker, and then I'd probably have to go just barely Kazooie over Tooie, and then Donkey Kong 64. But I loved all of them. All of them. Even Donkey Kong 64. The only one of the four that I did not 100%. I had one challenge left that I could never solve and never did do it. I could not do it in time.
I think I got through like 2 or 3 worlds on Donkey Kong and just put it down and never wanted to see it again. I hated the character switching thing.
I liked it.
It would have been different if you could switch on the fly, but you had to go back to the damn pad and then go back, and then they couldn't see where the bananas were because the draw distance was so terrible on the collectible. The closest I got to finishing Donkey Kong 64 was watching Greg Bemis 100% it in the Game Lab and extended play, which he one day just decided he was going to do, and I'm like, all right, I'll watch that because I sure as hell don't want to do it myself. Yeah. And it was like watching a man cut his own flesh every afternoon. It was like he would dread going in there that room and play that some more. He played it at night.
I really like that game. I don't know. I know a lot of people.
For me, I would if you could switch characters on the fly. And if you could see the damn collectibles from a distance,
no, that was a problem.
Definitely. That would solve my problems with that game. It was just the fact that constantly making me go back and switch to this guy, come over here, and then realizing, I need somebody else to do that. Go back to it, come back.
Even with the RAM expansion, Rare overdid it.
Yeah,
it's like we gave you this extra little bit of RAM, and you still couldn't get it to where it needed to be.
To me, the fact that you can't see the golden bananas more than like 100 yards out is insane.
That's a huge mistake. It is insane. Yeah.
Because that's how you know where you need to go.
No, you're right.
Like you should be. And Yooka-Laylee, to his credit, the draw distance is insane because it's huge out there, and like if you can get high enough and look around, you can generally tell where you need to be.
Yeah.
So they solved that problem.
Yeah. Okay.
20 years later.
Before we start talking about Yooka-Laylee, the last thing I want to say about sort of that whole era of 3D platformers, and I want to talk about a consistent criticism that a lot of people level at it and have been leveling at it for a long time, and that's calling them collectathons. And I honestly have never understood why people are so obsessed with the fact that you're picking up something all the time. It has eluded me since 1998. Like, I just don't get it, because if that's all you did, sure. Nobody just wants to collect shit. But they're just things along the way as you accomplish your bigger goals. And then at the end, they give you a banana or a star or whatever. That is irrelevant. Like, I always felt like people just tried to find a cheap way to cheapen the genre by saying they're all collectathon. You gotta collect that. You don't really have to collect anything. You have to complete objectives to get a star or whatever that you use to unlock more objectives. And I never understood why getting a star after you completed something is so different than a cutscene or whatever. Like, I just feel like this has been this criticism against 3D platformers from the very beginning, and I've never understood it. I remember when I worked at GameSpot, everybody there was like, oh, just a collectathon, just collect everything. And I'm like, well, you can, but it's like you said earlier, those objects are there as a guidepost to tell you, hey, you haven't been here yet. They help you discover new areas where you can complete new objectives. And talking about Banjo-Tooie, it was a huge help in Banjo-Tooie because the way
the alternative is like the thing people complain about now, where you just get a map with all the icons on exactly where to go find everything.
That, or just wandering around like an idiot having no idea where to go.
Right.
Because Tooie, that was how much it changed so drastically, was in the overworld. Banjo-Kazooie's overworld was so simple. You walk out of his house and you kind of see everything. You're like, I need to go there. Once I get enough of Jiggies, I can go here and unlock this, and you know what you're doing. Tooie was this like huge overworld. It was sprawling and had all these...
You get lost all the time.
You do. Because you... in Yooka-Laylee,
people complain about getting lost in Yooka-Laylee's overworld. Nuh-uh.
It's nothing compared to
Not
Tooie.
compared to Banjo-Tooie.
No. And if you don't have those collectibles there, because what happens in that game is you're wandering around trying to figure out where you need to go, you see that trail of whatever, and you're like, there, that's where I need to go. And like you said earlier, when you get up high, and you start looking around, being able to see farther, and you see that little trail of whatever it is, you're like, that's where I need to go. They're like guideposts to help you complete and move through the game. And I feel like people just... all they can think about is, oh, when I hit pause, I see how many of this I have, how many of this I have. And the only people who are concerned about that are people who want to 100% it. If you're just playing through the game, that stuff doesn't even matter. If you don't care about finding like all the secrets and the hidden areas, that stuff doesn't matter. So...
well, I do like that stuff. I never, but I like collecting all the chests and feathers in Assassin's Creed.
Right,
so,
right.
I mean,
I
think that it's you know,
it's just something that's bothered me for a long time.
But that's also why I complain so much about Donkey Kong 64 having the draw distance problem, is because
it eliminated that.
If I can't see that line of colored bananas,
yeah.
just like, you know, it's like in this game, like if you, or Banjo, you see the musical notes somewhere, you see the quills and the ukulele. It also tells you can get up here.
Right.
Like, this is a place you want to try to get to, so you should try to do that.
And you won't waste your time trying to get there if there's not the signpost there.
And Donkey Kong 64 lacking that, threw a giant monkey wrench into the way the game works. It broke the game for me, because I use that, like you say, I use that as a signpost.
The other thing was the overworld in that game, they had kind of learned from Tooie. Right. And they'd kind of dialed it back a little bit. It wasn't as overwhelming and sort of labyrinth.
I mean, Tooie has the worst overworld.
Oh, yeah.
By far.
That's where Rare was like...
they always went off the freaking rails.
It seemed like they had no supervisor.
They had a lot of problems. And, you know, Tooie also the problem, because I never finished it because I got so frustrated with you continually run into things you couldn't do. Yeah. And I could never quite tell if I couldn't do it because I was doing it wrong or because I didn't have some move I didn't know about yet.
Yeah.
And that became so discouraging that I eventually put the game down.
Well, it also, and I don't want to turn this whole topic into Banjo-Tooie topic, but the other problem with Banjo-Tooie was that sometimes, in Yooka-Laylee's like this too, you're in the ice world or whatever, and you've completed most of the world, and you find this thing that you can't, you can do something with, but you can't do anything with it yet. Leave it behind, you go on. And this was the way it was in Tooie as well. And then you'd pick up something like later on, like 12 hours or 15 hours of gameplay later, you finally get that thing that you needed to go back to that ice level and get into that new area, and you can't figure out how to find your way back to it.
And then when you do, you get in and you need another move you don't have yet to actually get the Jiggy that's in the... It was just, there's a point, we've said it before, but it's like at a certain point you have to admit that the game hates you.
Yeah.
And doesn't care if you're having a good time or not. Yeah. Banjo-Tooie crossed that line about 3 times per level.
And anyway, the reason I brought up the whole collect-a-thon thing, which still irks me to this day, is because I started seeing it in lazy reviews for Yooka-Laylee. I saw that phrase, collect-a-thon, collect-a-thon. Like in some reviews, like 10 or 15 times, and I'm like, man, I hate that a misguided sort of misnomer
because it's funny you say,
has become sort of canon when discussing a genre.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because when I see collect-a-thon, I think, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Because I like picking up everything.
I think for a lot of people, that was a derogatory thing.
I think you're right. But like, it doesn't dissuade me when I read that. It's because there's been a lot of collect-a-thons I enjoy very much. And like you say,
stop using that word.
But even like with, say, like the chests in Assassin's Creed 2, like you say, it wasn't about, I have to collect every chest. It was about, like, how do you get to that chest?
Right.
The interesting part of navigating the environment to find the thing.
Okay.
And I always find that worthwhile if the game is fun to play on that kind of moment-to-moment basis. And usually these games are, unless they're Donkey Kong 64.
All right, so now that we have all this sort of context, from where we're both coming from, when evaluating Yooka-Laylee, let's talk about Yooka-Laylee. Start.
Well, I've put about 6 some hours into it. I've been to every level. There's only 5 levels.
Yeah.
Plus the overworld.
It's a much smaller game than...
Yeah. And the way they try to get around that is when you initially go into a level, the level is the level, and then you can once you collect at least 1 pagey, which is the
add an IE onto anything.
Equivalent of the jiggies and the stars. In this one is you go back out and you can spend a certain number of pages to expand the level, which adds a whole, usually another section onto it. At one point, in one of the levels, it just gives you keys to open 2 locked places, at which point Laylee, who's the bat, complains about how lame that is as a reward. The game points out its own flaws a lot in the dialogue, which I find equally interesting and annoying.
It's so peculiar. It's like
you knew that wasn't a good reward for doing that, so why are you pointing it out as though it makes it any better?
Right, and so instead of taking the time to write the script and get the script into the game, why don't you just fix it?
Yeah.
and then not mention it. Mm-hmm. And you're right. Like, this game, there's a certain level of self-deprecation in games that you appreciate.
Right.
Where you're like, hey, like, I like that these developers are down to earth enough to get that there are certain parts that they didn't exactly nail.
And that was part
and
of
that's
Banjo
endearing.
as well.
It was a little bit.
There was a little bit of fourth wall poking here and there. This one is just like basically talking to you.
This game, it's like it tries to convince you the whole time it's a bad game. I can't believe how often they use it. Like, it also starts to lose its impact after a while. Like, breaking the fourth wall was cool once or twice, but when the whole game does it, it just doesn't matter anymore. You feel like you're living in, like, this bizarro world. And the other thing, too, that I found about Yooka-Laylee that isn't up to scratch with the older Rare games is the writing. The writing in this is terrible compared to the old Banjo games. Like, the Banjo games were great because adults could play them and kids could play them. There was all kinds of innuendo hidden in the text that if a kid read it, he'd have no clue what they were talking about. But it was one of those games where a dad could play it with his son or daughter. The kids are laughing at it for completely different reasons from the parent. And in this game, the writing, I don't think I laughed once in the whole game.
No, I don't think I have.
And I laughed out loud playing Banjo-Kazooie. I don't know how many times. Like, there was lots of clever little scripts and it understood. The other thing, too, is it did a better job of developing characters, even though there was no voice acting. Just with the way they wrote their earlier games, like, you could get an idea of the type of person that each character in the world was. In this, it's just like, it's another something with eyeballs. Like,
which is even one of the enemies.
Right.
They're literally rare eyeballs that jump onto any nearby object and turn it into an enemy.
Right.
Which
which is self-deprecating humor. It's like,
but that's a much funnier joke than most of what they're doing in the dialogue.
Well, if you remember in Conker's Bad Fur Day, there was like a broom with eyeballs on it. That's when, and see, that was the breaking point. That's where Rare took it to its most absurd. It said, we're going to put eyeballs on a broom, and you're going to like it. And it wasn't like they made fun of the fact that it was a broom with eyeballs, like, but it knew it had hit the hilt. It had gone as far as it could at that point.
Like this, and like here, this character. Well, you can't see him now, but like he's
trousers.
Trouser. He's a snake.
Trouser
snake. But he's also wearing pants.
Yeah.
But like that's the joke. And
right.
That's one of the best puns they got.
It is the best.
It's kind of the whole game is kind of a giant dad joke.
Yeah.
Which I guess makes sense because the people who were once sort of on the cutting edge of writing all that stuff in the 90s are now dads.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what we get.
I'm really disappointed in the writing in this game.
Yeah, and also like Yooka and Laylee kind of feel like watered down versions of Banjo and Kazooie. Like
do you like Yooka and Laylee?
I like Laylee okay, but Laylee is still most of her personality comes from the exact same things that made Kazooie herself. Like, she's rude and like mildly like speciesist and really like money driven and greedy and impatient, and that's about it. And that's Kazooie. It's the exact same character.
Yeah,
and Yooka is sort of good-natured and dumb a little bit, and just sort of like,
not like Banjo.
not the same way. Banjo's a big dopey bear.
Right.
Yuka's more like sort of everyman-ish. He doesn't have a personality.
I feel like Yuka
really.
is nothing.
Yeah.
I hate Yuka. I do not care about that character at all. It has nothing. Like, Banjo-Kazooie were great. They were like this duo. You had like the dumb, strong bear, and you had the really smart but weak bird. And both of them knew their roles and knew that the other one complemented each other, but that didn't keep them from sort of going after each other. Like, these characters, and look, they probably didn't even have the budget to do a lot of research on these characters, but they just do nothing for me. And look, I'd agree, I like Laylee more than I like Yuka. But
because Laylee has a personality.
Yeah. But I mean,
she has Kazooie's personality, but she still has one.
Kazooie was amazing. Kazooie was the better of the two between Banjo and Kazooie.
Well, also because Kazooie had better characters to work from. Like Kazooie had better characters to bounce off.
To work off of, yeah. So from that perspective, from the story, from the characters, from it just being interesting, it is a clear cut below what came before it. And look, that's what I want to talk about with this game, is it making a game as good as Banjo-Kazooie still wasn't going to be good enough in this day and age. You can't... Those games came out 20 years ago. You can't say your goal is to create a game exactly like a game that came out 20 years ago and say that's good enough. It isn't good enough, and it never was going to be good enough. And for Playtonic to think that that was the case, just because people were asking for Banjo 3E for 20 years, it wasn't that they just wanted what you had created of Banjo 3E 20 years ago. They wanted the story of those two characters to continue in a modern context. And that's not what you get here. You really just get a 1990s 3D platformer, albeit in HD, and it is a pretty game. I don't know what version you've been playing, but it's a pretty game. It's lacks a little polish here and there. You can see camera issues right there.
The camera's really bad, and
they
the
say
camera
they're
goes out of
fixing that.
Camera goes out of his way to be bad. So, like when you go into a new room, the camera's pointed at the door, looking at you face on. Yeah. And I can't count the number of times that's happened. And I've tried to move to recenter the camera, and I've walked off a cliff.
Yeah.
Or I've like gotten hit by something that was off camera. Like there's a lot of stuff off. And
see, that's the difference between having a studio like Rare and a publisher like Nintendo, where you have that huge QA department.
Like, look at that.
Oh,
That's real bad.
It is bad.
And in that section right there, you cannot control where the camera looks.
Yep.
Like you're stuck there.
But once you're an indie developer, and I think that's really what the problem with this game in general is that it's an indie game. And I will say,
I do like that bit of. That's one of the few bits of animation I really like. Is if you fall too far, Yuka lays face down on the ground, and Laylee pulls him up.
Yeah.
Like, there's a couple of little moments in this game.
And I will say, I mean, can you think of any other indie games that are even in the same league as Yooka-Laylee?
This. If you told me this was like a first or second party Sony game, I believe.
Oh yeah, in a heartbeat. And that's why I think people are being a little tough on this game, and maybe I'm being a little tough on it too, because again, I'm a big fan of the games that these guys made in the '90s. But really, if you think about what Playtonic did with the money it had and the staff that it had, it's a freaking miracle this game is. But at the end of the day, that's irrelevant when you're telling somebody whether a game is worth spending their money on or not. And the truth of the matter is, this is an indie game that they're asking $40 for. They're not asking $15 or $20 for. If they were asking $15 or $20 for this game, I guarantee you it would have got much higher reviews, and a lot more critics would have been a lot more apt to recommend it.
Which is, I think, what you paid if you were a Kickstarter backer.
Right.
So, well done.
Well done. Yeah, you got your money's worth for that. You had to wait a little longer maybe than you thought, although it wasn't delayed too badly.
Every
Kickstarter project is.
Any Kickstarter that is, basically, if you're a year past your delivery date from the Kickstarter campaign, I say you're still on time.
Yeah.
Every game is about a year late.
Now, one thing I will say is that, we're talking about the story and the characters, and one thing I would argue is that those are probably some of the least important elements to a 3D platformer. When it comes down to it, it's like, how does the game feel to play? Does the jumping feel good? Does the frame rate hold up so you can count on those platforms being where they're supposed to be on time? The other thing about 3D platformers is that they're not just about platforming. That's one of the reasons I love the genre so much, is because they usually have so much variety. They'll have like kart racing, they'll have first-person shooting, they'll have crazy little mini games to play. And that's another area where I feel like Playtonic not having a big QA team to test this game really foiled it, because I feel like a lot of the little sort of side stuff in this game is not handled especially well. Mm-hmm. Like anything that strays away from the platforming, I feel like feels janky.
There's I think it's this level. Once you expand it, there's a boss battle to fight against Rampo, who's a ramp.
Yeah.
Because
that's...
Of course he is. So you have to use the little roll move to go up the ramp and hop over logs that he's rolling down. And the camera is uncontrollable, and it's positioned just so you can't see the logs coming down at you.
Yeah.
The only challenge is because it won't show you what you can see, what you're supposed to be able to see and jump over.
Right.
So you basically have to you have to really work against the game to make it work. And also the physics of the sliding and the physics of the ramps and how they stick to the ramp and how they go straight is very bad in this game. I think the physics are a little off. I know you haven't gotten to the point, but there's another ramp related challenge outside of the final book world, which I think most people won't be able to complete.
Really?
It's so bad. And it's bad because the design is bad. It's not bad because, the Dark Souls get good. It's like, no, this is just, you're fighting the game. You're not having trouble completing the challenge because the challenge is challenging. You're having trouble because the game isn't behaving the way it's supposed to. It's not giving you a pattern to follow. It's not giving you physics you can rely on. Even I've slid down how many ramps in this game, and Yooka still doesn't land where I think he's going to land half the time.
That's a big issue. The physics in the game, like, you know how Mario... we've mentioned on the show before, Miyamoto, the character's a block.
Yeah.
He's like, if it's fun controlling a block, when I slap Mario's skin and his body on it, it's going to be a blast. And I don't feel like that was the approach that Playtonic took when they made this game, because
it's
the
just
controls
a little
too
mushy.
It just doesn't, it feels too floaty.
Yeah.
And that's the worst thing you can have in a 3D platformer, is the jumping feel floaty.
And it gets worse when you can, just like in the Banjo games, there were, Mumbo, it was able to turn you into a different thing in every level. In this one, the substantially less racist Dr. Puzz, she's an octopus.
Yeah.
You have to find molecule, which is a molecule.
Yeah.
Actually, an atom it's a symbol, like it's conventional symbol of an atom. And
you
give it to her
right here.
Yeah, and then it turns you into whatever. So in this one, it turns him into a plant that they can spray pollen on female plants. Which is sort of run as a sex joke, but also doesn't really go anywhere.
But that is kind of what I was talking about.
But I'm thinking about
games.
But I'm thinking about the ice level, which is the second one after this, where it turns you into a snowplow, and then you have to do some platforming to get to the last things the snowplow has to run over and clear up. And I was ready to kill whoever made that part of the game. It was. Because it skids everywhere, it does donuts when you don't want it to. You're already on an ice level, so you're already have no traction. And then to try to turn it around, the camera won't cooperate, and your turn radius is ridiculous. And then combine, 15, 16 tries probably, and hopping up the same platforms over and over again. And I had to do it because it's part of an ongoing sort of quest that if you turn it off, it resets it. And you have to do it all over again. And I wanted to go to bed. And I was like, I have to finish this, or I have to do it again. And I finally
I'm not doing that.
Not doing it again. And no one should. My girlfriend walked by when I was playing it last night or the night before, and she's like, oh, playing this, and she's like, you never look like you're having a good time when you're playing this game. And I'm like, I guess you're right. You're probably right. Like I don't really enjoy much of it because I always feel like I'm about to be betrayed.
Yeah, look, the challenge in this game is pretty much on par with Rare's older games. Rare, there was always that Jiggy or 5 or 10 in the Banjo games that were hard as balls. You had to try them over and over again. I just
feel like Banjo's physics are much more reliable.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And the camera is still. Playing Banjo again on Rare Replay, the camera is like the biggest takeaway for me was like, how did we do this?
Oh,
On top of that, how did we do this when it ran at like 20 frames a second? Like it was, we were very tolerant children.
Well, in the early 3D era, controlling a camera was a skill.
Yeah.
It was something like I would watch somebody play Mario 64 and it would drive me crazy. Like, what are you doing? Because I got so good at using the camera that I would frame it like it was cinematic while I was playing. and you go over to your buddy's house, and he'd just be trying to like jump at the camera into like you're like, bro, what are you doing, man? Like and you make you sick to your stomach, like watching people play like that. It used to be a skill, like being able to manage the camera while you're playing. Not only just give yourself a good view so you can play better, but to just make it more interesting to watch.
The other thing that I had forgotten about until I played Banjo again, off that was like, especially because early on I play on the rare replay, I only played the first level. Now I'm more in like Clanker's Cavern and Bubble Gloop Swamp and stuff like that. And I'd forgotten how often you had, because the camera wouldn't show you necessarily what you needed to see, you had to go into first person mode and look around.
Yeah.
Which is not a thing you do anymore, really, in games. If you're not in a first person, usually the camera can tilt where you need to see.
Well, either that or the game just shows you where you go.
Is, right.
Yeah, and they're not quite as obvious anymore. So that has certainly changed over time. But I don't know, Matt. What would you pay for Yooka-Laylee? I mean, obviously you paid full price for it, but
no, I got about half off through a series of coupons and pre-order discounts. But I think like 15 is about fair.
15? I would pay more than that.
15, 20?
Yeah, I would pay $20, $25 for it.
I don't know if I'm going to finish. I mean, I've gotten through the 5 worlds mainly because I wanted all the moves, because I got tired of the exact same thing with Banjo-Tooie. I keep running into things where I'm like, clear. It's better than Banjo-Tooie, in that my problem with Banjo-Tooie was I would run into situations where I wasn't sure if I was doing it wrong or if I just didn't have the move, because if you're not aware of what moves are coming up, you may not know what you need. Yooka-Laylee is much better about showing you, okay, this thing has this broken glass here, and so you don't have a move that can break that, so you're going to need a move that's coming up later. So I felt like it was less confusing in that regard, so I don't hate it in that regard. But I just basically burned through all the levels once I got enough pages to get all the moves, so I could go back to where I'd been before and get everything as we go. So because I prefer to be able to complete the level like in kind of one round.
Oh, what about the quizzes? What do you think of the quizzes? Which was a part of Banjo games.
Yeah, I mean, people really seem to hate the quizzes in this, but I kind of liked it. Like it was. I can see why it would annoy the hell out of you if you aren't paying attention.
Yeah.
And sure, I didn't remember how many pages I collected in the main hub. I didn't remember how many like notes I'd collected in one world or whatever. But like, they give you 3 chances, and I never failed, but either of them.
Yeah, so. Yeah. I like it.
I think it's a fun.
I think it's overused in this game, because I liked how I think it was Tooie at the end, you do the quiz with Grunty. Was it Tooie or the first one?
That was the first one.
That was the first one.
Because you'd run into her sister periodically,
right.
and she'd tell you little stupid trivia things about...
I liked it better when it was just kind of cordoned off into one thing that you did kind of at the end. Like, it's spread out a little bit more in this one.
I think there's only 2 in this, so it's not too bad.
Yeah, I like it, though. I think it's cool. Other games still don't really do it, and it's one of those ideas...
I also think that's legitimately funny. That it's impeding your progress because you haven't paid attention to these incredibly niggling details.
I can see where some people get really angry.
Absolutely, I can see why it would be frustrating, but it's just like, and like they don't give you a break either, because one of them I think was how long have you spent playing this game?
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, I know I've played a little over 6 hours, so I'll just be, and it's all 6 hours 12 minutes, 6 hours 13 minutes, 6 hours 17 minutes. I'm like,
that's just them messing with you, though.
And I guess right.
Yeah, that's one. Look, there are flashes of their humor in here. I don't know, honestly, if the writer who used to write for them came over and worked on this or not. But to me, there's a distinct drop in sort of the quality of the narrative. And
one thing it definitely gets right is how annoying everybody these sounds are.
Yeah.
Everyone makes incredibly annoying sounds. Anyone who is not playing the game in the same room as you will hate you.
Yeah.
And they even pointed out a couple of times.
They're worse than they were in the Banjo
Well, the
games.
worst is, I think it's the swamp level. There's a squeaky shopping cart, which is probably the most annoying sound I've ever heard in a platformer. And even I think Laylee even comments about, what do we need to do to make you stop talking? So, I mean, they're aware of it, and I guess that's part of the joke.
Yeah. I mean, I think in closing what I would say is...
Do I think it's a 2 out of 10? No.
No. That's just Jim Sterling being Jim Sterling. But one thing I would say at the end here is that this is not a full-price game.
Yeah.
It is a $40 game, which people are probably going to be able to get a lot cheaper on down the road. Would I pay $60 for this game? No.
No.
Heck no. In fact, we already went over what we would pay for it, but I feel like a lot of the people who are evaluating this game are evaluating it like you paid full price for this game. And I can see why. That's a testament to the game, I believe, is that as they played it, they're like, I've played games that are far worse that cost $60.
True.
And I think that may have just maybe bumped their impressions a little bit. It's not a bad game. It is a game that didn't evolve enough from what it was inspired by.
And at the same time, if I didn't have warm, pleasant feelings about this subgenre, this game would have left me very cold.
I would not have finished. I would not finish it. There's no way you would finish it if you don't like this genre. So yeah, if you're thinking, hey, I didn't really get into that stuff in the 90s, but maybe this is going to change my mind.
This is not going to
This
convince
is
you.
not it.
No.
This is not going to do that.
This ain't going to change your mind. This is for if you boot up Banjo and like you instantly hear that music and you're just like, yay! Like if it makes you feel happy to think about playing Banjo or Donkey Kong 64, this game will scratch that itch, although it won't maybe bring back the warm fuzzies the same way.
I think in some ways it may make you think that you were a little crazy.
A little bit, maybe.
Back in the 90s. But you got to put it all in context. And it's like, what other products were on the market back then compared to what
there was
on
nothing, because only the N64 could kind of do this game.
Yeah.
I don't find the music to be as good in this one, in the sense of like,
it's not as good, but it's still really good.
It's pretty good, but it's like just the use of the music in the old ones, where like it would shift depending on what you were doing, where you were. I mean, it's not as pronounced in this. I guess it's more subtle, maybe. But like, I mean, I played Banjo in preparation for this last weekend, and I'm still humming that damn music in my head.
That's some of the best like gaming music ever, the Banjo. Yeah. But I think the music in this is still really good, man.
It's fine.
I thought it was really good. That was one of the things I thought was one of the best elements in the game, to be honest. So, teach their own music, especially. Obviously, some people don't even like entire genres that other people love, so that's one of the more subjective things that's kind of hard to quantify. I love the music in Yooka-Laylee. So, there you go. That's Yooka-Laylee. We'll move on to our trailer of the week this week. Would have been nice if we could have got the Star Wars one in there. Actually, there was a couple really good trailers this week, but I think the most important trailer from this week is a new trailer for Overwatch. Overwatch just launched a brand new special event that's running until May 1st, I believe.
I think it's past that, isn't it?
I think it's till May 1st.
Maybe it is.
I believe so.
I've only seen this trailer in French, so because it leaked
in French. Yeah. And so it's called Overwatch Uprising, and it's a co-op special event that actually goes back to the very first mission that Tracer ever completed. Get your questions in right now while we're watching the trailer. Let's roll it.
This is Morrison. London has been attacked. King's Row has fallen. We're on the brink of open war.
Hundreds are dead and thousands injured.
Team, it's up to you. Lieutenant Wilhelm reporting. We will not let you down, Commander.
We will save who we can.
Blackwatch assets report heavy fortifications in the area. They have complete tactical control.
You leave that to me. I've got something special planned.
Strike team, we're counting on you. And keep the rookies safe.
You can count on me, sir.
Watch your back! Moving the payload!
Push forward. You got it!
So there you have it, running until May 1st. I think it just said right on the screen there. So you have a couple more weeks to get in on it. All the feedback about it has been amazing. Everyone loves it. A lot of people are saying now they just want a campaign so much more.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think I said back when it came out, I think it wouldn't surprise me if Blizzard put something like that up eventually.
Yeah.
Once they've kind of decided how the lore flows. And, the PvE co-op stuff seems to be very well received on this event.
Well, I think this event proves that they are not going to have to release Overwatch 2 to create a campaign.
Yeah.
Like, they could just totally just roll it out and even charge some for DLC or whatever, and I think it would work. So, to answer your questions, that as Sam was saying, a lot of people were asking, that was not me playing Yooka-Laylee, by the way, or Matt.
No.
That was just footage that we got.
That was some infuriating person who doesn't know how to platform on floating platforms.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is get good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the other thing I like about platformers is there's a lot of skill involved.
Yeah.
And I feel like Yooka-Laylee
it,
lets you down a little bit in that regard. As
a
far
little
as
bit.
not giving
I
you
have
the
found
tools.
that like it's very good. It's very reliable in terms of where I land on like the floating platforms when you're just talking about straight up jumping, double jumping, and gliding.
Yeah.
It's when you start having to use the special moves to do weird things that it just
Banjo
feels
is a
like it
little
comes
guilty
apart.
of that too.
Not on the level of this.
No. But it's still like some of the more Kazooie-focused moves in the Banjo games were a little wonky.
Well, that's the other thing. I feel they went too far with, like, because Kazooie always controlled a little weird. Like,
yeah.
Kazooie was always
really
a little
fast
unstable.
and like spastic. Yeah.
Laylee she can't go straight.
Yeah.
Like with the flight move, like as soon as you start accelerating, she just starts wiggling back and forth, and you can't go anywhere you want to go. There's enough to worry about in that game without having to worry about the character not controlling properly, and I feel like they crossed that line a few times with some of the special moves.
Okay, questions. I don't have an iPad today. My wife took the iPad. She is on a vacation that I am not on because I don't know what a vacation is anymore. So I have to. It's a little harder to see your questions here.
The Legacy asks, do you think the reception of Yooka-Laylee will discourage other developers to make 3D platformers besides Nintendo with Mario? I think the genre can be successful. The most recent Ratchet & Clank sold more than any other game in the franchise. Uncharted is worth $40 with the Jack and Daxter Collection pre-order perk. I guess that wasn't all one question.
That was quite a run-on sentence, I might also add. Yes, I think it will discourage. I mean, I don't think other developers and publishers needed to be discouraged away from this genre.
No, I don't think they were going to do that.
They weren't going to do it anyway.
Do you think Playtonic will do another one?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, without a doubt. Playtonic, look, even though they've made a bunch of these games before, they still learned a ton of crap making this game because they've never made a game with a team this size. Even back in the N64 days, their core team still had 20, 25 people on it. So I feel like Playtonic learned a lot. It was their first project as their own studio. And in all honesty, an amazing result. Think about what they just did. I mean, a team that small to create a game that looks like a team of a couple hundred made it. And I think that's what's happening with this game is that people are comparing it to games that are made by teams of 200 people. And when you think about what these guys pulled off with the small team, not that much time either, I think it's really impressive. Also a testament to the middleware that's out there now, obviously. It's much easier to make games now than it was back then. You don't have to build your own engine anymore from scratch. So a combination of their expertise and understanding of the genre and the tools that are available to them is the resulting product that we get there. And I don't think developers or publishers needed to be discouraged away from 3D platformers, although it makes me sad. But I think if any of them were thinking about maybe doing one, no way. I think we're going to have to rely on Nintendo for that stuff going forward, and hopefully Playtonic sticks with it. Someone's saying you need something behind you on the set. I've been saying that for 2 years. I've just never put anything back there. Maybe next week. We'll see. Let's see.
Gerzilla says they're playing Persona 5, and it helps to watch and listen to Daniel Bloodworth play through Earthbound at the same time.
Interesting.
I also did this while grinding in Mass Effect for a different reason. Do you have games or parts of games where you like to watch, listen to other things as well?
I think, honestly, if you're talking about Persona 5, it's just Persona 5, because I cannot listen to any of the music in that game ever again. For the amount of time that you spend playing that game, they need like another 500 songs. Dude, I am so sick.
Well, you'll be able to download a lot of songs from the old games coming up to put into the game for a mere $7, $8. I mean, the DLC prices on that game are crazy. A lot of cosmetic stuff for like $7.99.
I am so sick of the music in that game. My wife is so sick of the music in that game. Like, she has actually complained about Persona 5 more than any game she has ever complained about in my entire life of being with her.
Wow.
She hates everything.
Should put in Persona 4 and let her hear that music.
No, I know.
It's worse.
It's not that the music's bad.
It's just repetitive.
I think the music's good.
Yeah.
There's just nowhere you cannot expect somebody to play a game for 100, and it's 100 hours, to play a game that long and give him like 5 songs. Like, it is. I'm not even exaggerating. Yeah. Like, that's how many songs are in that game. It drove me bad. It drove her batty. She's like, I cannot take that song anymore. You need to turn it off or you need to put on the headphones. And I was like, I totally get it. I totally understand. Like, I didn't push back on it. I was like, I get it. Like, yeah. I just think that Persona is a game that you can play while doing just about anything else. Because it's the turn-based. So you can take one turn and just walk away and let it sit there. I don't know how much game time I have burned on my game time clock not playing the game. Because I'll just let it sit. I'll just put the controller down and then I'll go do something else and work on something else and then come back and pick it up and just, like, mid-battle.
I haven't done that with Persona 5, but I have done that. I did do that with Zelda, so I don't really know how long I played Zelda.
Yeah.
Because I just leave it forever.
Some games are smart, and if you're idle, it'll stop counting it, but I think Persona counts the whole time.
If I'm doing something mindlessly grindy, I will usually, I'll put on, like YouTube videos or, like, science lectures or, like, for No Man's Sky when I was just, like, grinding for money or whatever, or flying, like, exploring stuff or digging up resources over and over, I'd put on, like, astronomy lectures.
Yeah.
For Zelda, when I was looking for Korok seeds, I would put on, like, you know, like some kind of, like, TED Talks or something, like stuff like that. Carl Sagan sometimes. Everything got me putting Alan Watts on sometimes, which is just sort of nice mindless Zen blather.
There really is no reason to listen to... After the first 20 hours, there's no reason to really listen to the audio in Persona 5 anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, the voice acting is...
You'd miss that endearing voice acting. No.
No.
Well, it's also like the pacing on it is so slow.
It is. Stuff happens at like a glacial pace.
Like things take days in that game that really feel like they take days.
They take days, yeah. Agreed. Here, we're kind of answering someone else's question right now. Oh, wait, I just lost it. From F18 Master C, how's Persona 5 going, guys? I've seen Shane grinding away on PSN. I think you just answered your own question. Grinding away. I will say one thing about that game, though, is it keeps introducing new stuff.
Yeah, it never stops.
No. I'm literally at like hour 100, and it just introduced a new mechanic. It's like,
that's the thing that kind of bugs me, because like at least with 3 and 4, there was a point at which you felt like the game was on. Like, it was like, okay, everything's been introduced and I can play now.
Yeah.
Persona 5 isn't getting there.
It's madness. Whoever made this game, they're insane. And it's making me insane.
What day are you at? Like,
I don't even know.
Month?
Oh. Maybe December or...
Oh, you're getting close then.
Oh, I'm almost to the... I have to be at the end. If I'm not, I'm not going to make it. I've reached the end of my rope with Persona 5. I just... Look, like I said, it introduces a new mechanic like every 15 hours. It's not like you get one every hour. It's like you think you reach the place that you're talking about. Where you're like, okay, I understand everything now. I know all the systems. I have them all mastered, and then something new comes. Like 15 hours apart. It is insane. That game is nuts. Like, I honestly don't know if I'll be able to finish it. Like, I feel like I reached my breaking point.
I'm almost 20 hours in, and I'm like, maybe half the team is assembled.
No, well,
it just keeps going.
No, they're probably not even half as assembled yet, Matt.
I know all the cast. I've seen the cast.
Okay.
I was like, I haven't seen them. I don't even know them. Still going.
I cannot imagine what it was like to be the editors who had to review this game on deadline. I cannot even...
Do you think they finished it?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't want to call anyone a liar. I don't know if they ever said that they finished it or not, but I don't know how they would have done it. I really don't. Like, I mean, literally, I don't know if they had enough hours from the moment Atlas sent out the code to embargo to finish it, period. If they didn't sleep, eat crap.
Because presumably they had other tasks in their lives.
Yes, exactly. It boggles my mind to think about it. I feel like I'm beating myself up playing the game now. And again, it's like peaks and valleys. Like, you go through like these 10 and 12 hour stretches where you just like walk through every battle with like without ever getting hit. And then you get to this dungeon where you walk in and it's just, you just get one hit. Or you walk into this dungeon where it's hard again out of nowhere. And a lot of it is like, what personas do you have and attacks do you have? Do you have anything that's going to drop the enemy? But as you get farther into the game, the enemies don't have as many weak spots that you can use. So some will have like 3 different elements that will make them drop. But as you get farther in the game, there's like 1. And maybe you don't have the persona that's with that alignment. And so you have to actually like fight them, like just hand to hand or whatever.
Even early on, I ran into a thing where it was like a bunch, I finished a dungeon, a bunch of story happened, and then they forced me into a mini dungeon where I had to fight a boss.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, this boss one-shotted 3 out of the 4 party members every single time on the first turn.
Yep.
Even when I defended. And I couldn't, and I had to play that round, and of course there's nowhere to save. So you have to
fight through all the rank and file enemies.
Well, not even that. I had to go through like 2 days of game story, fast forwarding through everything to get back to it. I tried it 7 times.
All janky in this game.
I tried it 7 times. 7th time I got lucky, and he did not one-shot anybody, and I was able to kill him before he could get off like the group attack just out of luck. It was pure luck. But like, there's nowhere I can go to level up. I didn't have any personas that had like, debuffs that would like lower his attack. There was no way for me to improve my party to handle this situation. It just wasn't there. There was no way out of it. And I was like, that's terrible design.
That kind of stuff keeps happening the whole way through. And like, it still annoys the crap out of me. For instance, here's a good example. What I figured out, it will not let me craft anymore because it has gated my proficiency. It did not want me. It's like, wait.
Oh, yeah, where the cat's like, let's not do that today.
Yeah.
Like, no, I need lock picks, you dick.
No, I have been without lock picks for 30 hours now. And I have to pass up all these chests. And the chests with the locks have the best weapons. Yeah. And so I'm like, I'm just leaving these weapons behind. That is garbage, dude. It has not let me craft a lock pick in over a month. It just won't let you. Just like, don't want to do that today.
And for some reason, it's worse that it's the cat not letting you do it. In the previous games, it was always like you try to do it, and the protagonist would think like, I shouldn't do that right now.
No, now it's cat.
Somehow Morgana. It's worse when it's like, why does this cat rule my life?
Yeah,
like some kind of like some kind of master-slave dichotomy. I don't know.
I have spent so much time playing that game. I could do an entire 3-hour episode of GameFace just about Persona 5 after we've already talked about it 3 times on the show. I mean, it is just... I've never played a game like it before. I don't know if I ever will again.
You play Persona 6.
I don't think I will. I honestly don't think I will. It's like I've got everything out of this that I can get out of it. And if I knew that the Persona 6 was a lot like Persona 5, which was a lot like Persona 4, I would not play another game in the franchise. I get it.
Looney on the Loose asks, hey, has your muted enjoyment of Yooka-Laylee made you worried about Mario Odyssey at all, since it seems to be going back to the style of the N64 3D platformer genre?
Nope.
No, because Nintendo don't do that.
No, I have no concerns whatsoever, other than like him being in the big city and that being weird.
You gotta hate on New Donk.
Yeah.
New Donk City.
I have no problem hating on New Donk City. But otherwise, I have no concerns that Nintendo's going to make an excellent 3D platform.
I don't know. I don't think Nintendo will suffer from the same problems. Their physics in these games tend to be much more solid.
Let's see. We have one more. I cannot. It really sucks using this phone to try to look at questions, unfortunately. Somebody wrote, that's why she went on vacation, Persona 5. It may have been the breaking point. She's like, I can't take this anymore. And then someone says the music never gets old. How can you say that? you must have not played it very long. That's all I can say. Because there's no way you can, any human being can listen to the same 5 songs for 100 hours and say that's not a problem. I believe that qualifies as like torture in some third world countries.
Dinky Doo 15 asks, hey Shane, if you were not in the gaming industry, what other job would you want to do?
Sports writer. Working in sports in some capacity.
That's basically the trajectory you were on before you
Before I went into games, yeah. I would work in sports in some way, shape, or form, at least I think. I was never good enough to play them professionally, but I would probably cover them. And I would be a journalist no matter what. If you're saying if I wouldn't be a journalist, what would I do? Oh, gosh. I don't know. I really don't know. Once you go to school for something, a street racer, that's right. I think we established that in last week's episode. I would be in the Fast and Furious. I'm a street racer. I honestly don't know. I mean, I think, when you go to college, everyone's confused. They're like, what am I going to do? What am I going to be? And I figured out what I wanted to do and what I wanted to be. And I haven't really thought about doing or being anything else. I'm not a journalist who wants to become a game developer. I've never wanted to be that. I didn't go into games journalism to get a job at a game developer. And look, I'm not saying everybody does. It goes to work at game development studios. Some people wanted to be a journalist and just decided they want to do that more. But there are people who become journalists with the sole reason to work in development, which again is fine, as long as you're not trying to put on airs like that wasn't your plan all along. So, yeah, I mean, I'm doing what I've always wanted to do, and I haven't really thought about doing anything else. So I don't know. What about you, Matt? What would you do if you weren't doing this?
I don't know. I'd probably film. I mean, when I was in high school, I wanted to be in special effects, but then special effects became computers.
Yeah.
And the appeal to me was kind of the models and the motion control camera stuff and all that. So that job kind of vanished after Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
But it would probably be film stuff of some nature, which may, could still happen. We'll see. Although if you do want to hear me talk about movies, I am on this week's Film Threat podcast.
That's a big podcast.
That's filmthreat.com. It's me and Anthony Bench. We went to see Fast 8, Fate of the Furious. And so the podcast is us talking about the Fast and the Furious series and the Transformers series to some degree. And then we stop the podcast, we went and saw the screening of the movie, we come back and talk about the movie. Huge spoilers for all the Fast and the Furious movies except for, to some degree, 8. So if you don't want to be spoiled on the entire Fast and the Furious series, don't listen to it. But if you do want to hear me talk about Fast and Furious...
Are there really spoilers in those movies?
Hey, man, the family goes through some ups and downs through those films, all right? Like, it's a wild roller coaster ride of emotion.
I would agree with that. I'm not going to say what kind of emotion, but...
But, yeah, so Film Threat, you can probably find me on Film Threat talking about movies fairly often from here on out.
There you go. One last question from the best username in the room. No offense to anybody else. Sweet Cheeks Magoo. I love that name. Do you agree the era of casual gaming is over, i.e. copying Call of Duty and the Wii? If so, what do you predict will be the next trend?
If I could predict that, I wouldn't be here.
That's a good point.
I don't know what the next trend will be.
I don't think the era of casual gaming is over, first of all, because I just think a lot of those people that bought the Wii have just moved over to mobile gaming. Mobile gaming is the new casual gaming. And I don't know if you saw on Sifted this week, but mobile gaming continues to rise in revenue. While console gaming and the stuff that we like is basically running in place, mobile gaming continues to go up. So it's just like the Wii. The Wii was a casual console. It was the best-selling console. Once the casuals get a hold of it, that's when things go nuclear. So I don't think that casual gaming is over at all. I think it's only going to get bigger. I think we're going to feel like more of the minority as time goes on. For instance, the last time I was home, unfortunately when I had to go home for the funeral for my sister and my father, I ran into an old friend who I used to game with, and he was mobiled out. He hadn't turned on his consoles in like a year. He was playing like Mobile Strike and all this stuff. And like, I know, I did the same thing. I raised the eyebrow. I'm like, what you doing, bro? And then like 2 of our other friends come over and they sit down and pull out their phones and they start playing Mobile Strike against each other.
Wow.
And I started to get it. I'm like, I see. They're like, oh yeah, we're in a clan. So like all my old friends from Central Pennsylvania who I used to hardcore game with are now all playing mobile games in clans together against other clans. And sadly, that's just the way it goes for a lot of people. Like, a lot of people like to just be able to pull out their phone and, like, tap a couple things and be like, I'm a gamer still.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
just can't. I very rarely find a mobile game that holds my attention like that. I'm playing Transformers Forged to Fight, which is basically a Transformers reskin of that Marvel Contest of Champions game. And it's fun. You know, it's a fighting game to some degree, which is obviously appealing to me. And it's got Transformers, which I like. But, like, do I see myself continuing to play? Like, am I still going to be playing that, like, booting it up regularly a month from now? Probably not, because it's just not that compelling. And I don't, if that was my only game outlet, I'd go crazy. Because there's just nothing there that what was it? It was as Roger Ebert put it about the Transformers 2 movie. These people, you know, you deserve films that don't just come up to your toes. Yeah. You deserve stuff that covers you completely. Yeah. And I feel like most mobile games are just stuff that, like, you know, it's like dipping your toe in the pool and
bubble gum
and being like, oh, that's cool, that's fun,
tastes good
that's
for
nice.
5 minutes,
yeah.
and then it's gone.
But and a lot of people don't have the desire to have games that go beyond that, and that's fine. But there's no way mobile gaming is a substitute for, you know, full-fledged console or PC gaming for me.
I think for a lot of people,
it's a different medium almost.
It is,
to me.
And I think for a lot of people, they look at gaming as a way to connect with other people, believe it or not. And, you know, with my friends back, we used to sit side by side on the couch and play games. But as you get older, one, games get way more complicated. And if you have 2 kids and a wife and a job and a side job or whatever, which a lot of my friends do, they don't have the time to keep up with it the way they want. Of course, they come to
or even time to sit next to each other on a couch.
Right. So the way they look at it is if this is some way I can keep in touch with my friend who I've been friends with for like 30 plus years, and this is as good as it gets for this friend, like this is the best he can do. He can play Mobile Strike. He can spend 10 minutes a day, every day on it, but only 10 minutes, and he can put in his commands and then put it away. And he's still engaged with me, and we have our little chat room in the game that we can chat back and forth, and maybe we don't chat about the game, we chat about a bunch of other stuff, but still we're still connected. I think that's enough for a lot of people, particularly folks our age that have families and a lot of responsibility. So I don't begrudge anyone who plays mobile games. Obviously, Pactor's a huge mobile gamer. He loves mobile gaming.
But it ain't no GoldenEye.
No, and it's not. And, you know, I try to convince them. I'm like, it's not the same, you know. It's like, you have your console sitting here. I'll play online with you all the time, man. Like, let's do it. You know what? I've been on your friends list for 5 years now. And he's just like, but it's like, I start thinking about it. I'm like coordinating. And he's like, you're 3 hours behind me. And he's like, it just seems like a big hassle. And he's like, I can just pull out my phone. And the thing about mobile games that really get it is that there's no time. Time is irrelevant. It's like, it's your turn. And then you have, you know, it's your turn.
It's
and
like
then
play by email almost.
Yeah, it almost kind of is. And I think it works for a lot of people who just don't have a lot of extra time on their hands. So I don't like it. I don't enjoy it, but I understand why all my old gamer friends...
So do you play Mobile Strike with them?
I don't, no. They try to get me into it. And I was like, I can't. I'm like, I spend every waking hour playing games that our users care about. Like, if I waste my time playing Mobile Strike, that's time I could... I would have been able to talk about Mr. Shifty this week if I had played Mobile Strike. That's how I look at it. You know, I'm trying to budget my time. So, different strokes for different folks. Don't begrudge people because they're different from you. But I think the idea is to find like-minded people to surround yourself with so everyone can enjoy the hobby as much as possible. So, with that, we're out. I hope everybody has a great Easter. I realize a lot of you guys are watching it on Easter morning. So hopefully the bunny left you a big old basket full of chocolate and other goodies. You got any plans for Easter, Matt?
Nope.
Gonna play some games, maybe?
Play some games. Maybe I'll drive around and enjoy the fact that like half the people in the city are gone.
It is kind of nice.
There's a lot of people out of town for the holiday weekend.
I'm burning my Easter Sunday doing taxes. I've been working on taxes for 4 days. Let me tell you, doing taxes for a business is no fun. And I even have an accountant. It's just getting the stuff together to get to the accountant is a freaking nightmare. So, yeah. There goes my Easter. And no candy either. My wife usually gives me a basket of chocolate, and she left before she gave me the basket. So, probably good for my waistline anyway. So, hope everyone's having a great weekend. Hope everyone has an awesome Easter. GameFace is up and out.